Welcome to the Regular People Podcast. This is Wade Allen, and joining me today is Josie. She is a history major, not that that probably will pertain to this conversation, but today we're going to be talking about probably a wide variety of things. Hi.
Hi, thanks for having me today.
Yeah, no problem. So before we actually talk about anything in particular, I wanted to know, and I want the listeners to know, what have you been spending the last 5 years of your life doing?
The last 5 years, so that's 2015. So back in 2015, that was actually right when I graduated from college. So I went to the University of Minnesota and I was a history graduate. I kind of planned on going to grad school to do some research and writing in the history field, but that kind of just didn't really pan out just because, school costs a ton of money. So then I ended up moving back to Wisconsin with my then boyfriend, now husband, Jacob, and we moved into this house here in Milwaukee. We both ended up kind of just getting random jobs just to, because we both needed some sort of income, and I ended up being a cake decorator for 3 years for Sendix, which was a super cool experience. It was something that I always wanted to do when I was a kid, when I watched shows like Cake Boss or, other things on the Food Network. That was always just a huge dream.
Cake Boss-y things? Did you use a bunch of fondant to make crazy skyscrapers? And
we didn't actually use any fondant at Sendix. That was sort of a higher end pastry, specialized cake shop thing. It was mostly just buttercream. But I did make some pretty cool stuff. And it was actually really interesting because I did start with zero experience. I kind of just went to the interview and said, hey, I really think it'd be cool to decorate cakes. And they were like, cool, what can you do? And I was like, nothing.
And
I just kind of experimented in the past with small little cupcakes at home or cookies and stuff. So they just were like, hey, decorate this cake. And I did it. And I did a pretty bad job. And they were like, you're hired.
As part of the interview, you had to decorate a cake? Or was
Yep, it was a skills test.
Wow.
And so somehow I managed to pass that. And they were like, sure, she's got potential. And then I ended up, working there for 3 years. But over the first 6 months, I would take buttercream home after work, and I would pipe flowers at home and practice my handwriting and practice.
Eat it.
Oh, that would be cool too. But then eventually, the cake decorator who was there, she was the lead one. She trained me a little bit, but then she left, and so then I became the only decorator there. So I was the only decorator for the whole store for 2 years then. And wow. I pretty much learned everything on the job by myself or off of YouTube or Pinterest, and it was pretty cool. It was a good experience.
Was that a big burden? Did you have to make a ton of cakes that you had to work overtime to do if you're the only cake decorator?
Yeah, so they didn't really like overtime, just like every place. They really frowned upon it. So a lot of stuff that I did that I didn't know how to do, I'd practice outside of work. And they didn't want me to do that. They didn't really care if I did that or not. But that was more a personal thing, because I'm one of those people who, when I start a new hobby, I want to be good at it ASAP. Yeah. In the first week, I want to have major improvement in that thing, not just taking several years to get good at something.
I like to be immediately good at things too. Are you the type of person who, if you don't have major improvement within that first week of trying a new thing, do you quit?
I don't quit, but I do get very discouraged. But then I tell myself, hey, you do this every time you try something new. Yeah. So it's just that want to always be good at things, to not necessarily impress other people, but just to impress myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's to feel a sense of personal improvement and achievement. I
totally.
guess. Not even to flaunt it to other people, just in your own mind.
To feel like you can be good at something and master it quickly, or just become better at it.
Yeah. Do you still hold those cake decorating skills that you learned?
So I'm actually currently working on a lot of baking projects. I'd really like to start a home bakery out of my house, doing cakes and cupcakes and cookies and stuff. So I'm getting back into it now, but that's just as of the last month. So I'm sure I can still do a ton of those skills. Obviously, I can only practice at home. It's not like I'm doing it for 8 hours a day at work. Yeah. But definitely.
Is that something that you develop carpal tunnel over?
Oh my gosh, your wrist hurts so bad after doing that for so many years.
Yeah, because I imagine it's just kind of fine twisting of the wrist and to do all the decorations, a lot of hand movement for 8 hours.
Totally. The girl that actually trained me, she ended up having permanent wrist problems. So she had to wear a wrist brace. Well, she quit because she was actually in college training to be something else. And so then she went and did that. But she actually is now back to cake decorating, I'm pretty sure. But when she had left, she was wearing a brace on her wrist every single day. Yeah. And some days her wrist would flare up so bad that she really couldn't even decorate cakes. And she was only a couple years older than me. So at the time, she was 25 or 26, which is crazy. But she'd been decorating cakes since she was probably 16 or 17 years old.
Is cake decorating only decorating, or did you also do the baking?
So it depends on where you work. At big grocery stores like Sundix or Pick and Save or Walmart or whatever, you just get in everything frozen. So that's your cakes, that's your frosting, that's all your stuff like that. So you just thaw the cake and decorate it essentially. So all of your time is spent decorating, which is pretty cool.
And you can't decorate cakes and then freeze them, then send them to the Sendix? The decorations don't hold up being frozen?
They do. I mean, you can definitely decorate a cake and then freeze it.
Well, I mean, I just wonder, why do they have cake decorators in the store rather than in the giant facility where all the cakes are made?
Well, so individual customers will come there,
yeah.
just like local people who are just like, hey, I'm looking for a cake for this weekend. Can you do this particular decoration and whatever? So, I mean, if you wanted like very basic cakes, actually what Sendix did is they had a big production warehouse. So just like cakes that you would throw in the freezer that were just had like balloons or flowers or just something really basic. They did have a lot of other people that did that kind of stuff. But for anything specialty, they had like particular decorators.
Yeah, I totally forgot about the fact that you're going to request specific decorations for your birthday or whatever it is, your wedding.
Right.
Yeah. Is Sendix only a local, like, Wisconsin chain, or is it?
Yeah, I think it's a southeastern Wisconsin thing.
Okay, so then for anybody who might be listening outside of Wisconsin, Sendix is a grocery store.
It's like slightly upscale.
Yeah. So I interrupted you before, though. You were telling your story of the past 5 years, and I started talking about cakes a lot.
Oh, yeah. No, I love talking about cakes. It's great. But yeah, so then I worked there for 3 years. And actually most of the time that I was there, I'd just become vegetarian when I started working there. But pretty much immediately after that, I started dabbling in veganism and just plant-based food. And I really enjoy cooking and baking. And I just wanted to kind of try something new. And, vegan and vegetarian baking and cooking, that's like a whole different thing, I'm sure you know that.
Yeah.
But it's just totally different than regular cooking. So I was like, hey, this is a challenge. It was like, I wanted to do it to be healthy, and I had some, health issues that I was trying to solve. So it was a good challenge for me. So I started getting really into doing a lot of plant-based cooking, and it was just exciting for me because it wasn't the normal thing.
Yeah.
You're using so many different ingredients and reading through recipes and cookbooks that you wouldn't have found yourself looking at had you not even looked into that kind of thing.
One thing that I find about vegetarian or vegan baking or cooking in general is that it kind of makes you have to be better. It's like, if you don't put restrictions on the type of thing that you can make, you don't really even have to try to be creative about it. The fact that you have these boundaries makes creativity necessary.
Totally.
You know what I mean? So I feel like it actually, generally speaking, improves your ability to cook or to bake. It's like, what is the TV show? Is it Chopped? Where they give them a certain amount of ingredients they have to use.
I think so.
And then like the fact that they have these limits is what makes them come up with crazy things.
Totally.
If you have the whole world at your disposal, you can come up with crazy things still. It just, I think it's much less likely. You're not forced into having to think outside the box because the box is so huge.
Right. And I feel like the whole standard American diet is very much, it's so boring to me, just in general. Like if you set aside like ethics and the environment and all that kind of stuff, just that type of dietary choices are just boring. It's like meat is the center of your dish and that's it. It's like meat and then a side, which could be vegetables, but it could also just be something crappy, Yeah. And it's like, that's how everyone thinks they have to structure their meals. But when you make something that's like plant-based, it's like literally anything can be your entire meal, and you can have, all of the food groups that you want in one big dish, like a curry over rice with spinach or something like that. You're getting your vegetables, your grains, your greens, like all of these different things in one meal versus just having a hunk of meat and some potatoes or something.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the times people think you need specific ingredients in order to make things. Like to make a, what are those called? You use the egg white, the baking thing. I can't think of it.
Are you thinking of like a macaron?
Yeah, like that. A macaron type.
Meringue,
that's it. To make meringue, people always think that you need egg whites. And then it's like a vegan baker makes meringue using aquafaba.
Which is such a crazy ingredient.
Yeah.
Like it's one of the coolest things
juice
that I've discovered.
So then once you see someone do that, you realize that your like preconceived notions of what you need to do to make this food is actually not correct. And you can make the same thing using a wide variety of ingredients.
Totally. There's so many different substitutes for so many different things, and you don't have to have a narrow mind about what sort of ingredients that you're using. It's like there's so many different things out there that you can use.
So it kind of like disrupts the dogma that you might find in a cooking school of the correct way to do each thing. There's several ways that lead to the same goal.
Definitely. And it's cool to look at traditional cooking methods, and then you can think of all the plant-based substitutes that you can use. So it's like you're recreating that dish, but in an entirely new way with new ingredients that people didn't used to use, several hundred years ago.
Yeah. So then after your cake decorating experience and you're talking about becoming vegan. What happened next?
So then I got really into vegan cooking, and I've always really wanted to cook really well. Like, I grew up watching my grandma's cook and my mom cook, and I always just wanted to be one of those people who could just walk into the kitchen and just be good at it. Just throw anything together with any ingredients that they had. So I started cooking a lot, and it just became kind of like my newer passion over cake decorating, which I still really enjoyed. But I was kind of looking to move on to something new, just to try something else out. So I started looking for some jobs, and I was trying to look for work in a vegan restaurant. I saw a job opening that was just for like sandwich line. And I was like, hey, that would be a good foot in the door. Like, I can be assembling people's food and making people's food, but maybe one day I could actually cook there.
Yeah.
So then I applied to that job, and I got that job, and I worked there for about 6 months, and it was just doing kind of like the assembly line thing, just putting together people's orders and things like that. And then the person who was the prep manager, she ended up quitting just kind of on the spot. And they were like, hey, we know that you really like to cook. We know that you said you have a bunch of skills doing that and you're kind of passionate about it. Do you want to do it? And I was like, heck yeah. So then I accepted that job, and that's currently where I'm at.
Nice. So what's the next step, do you imagine, in your life?
Honestly, I don't know. I'm kind of, I'm not trying to super plan out my future. I don't have one particular, career path in mind or thing that I want to do. But the one thing that it seems that I'm the most passionate about is food. So just food in general, whether that's baking or whether that's cooking. And I guess I would see myself continuing on that path until I just decide that working in food is no longer for me.
That happens to a lot of people, though. I was just visiting with my girlfriend's family, and her cousin was working on Whole Foods for like 20 years. And then just abruptly, it's just like, I'm not into this anymore.
Right.
But yeah, you've been baking some cakes recently, and I tried like 3 of them. They were all delicious.
Oh, thank you.
Do you have anything that you're working on right now?
Well, so my current plan, so I would really like to start up that home bakery, like I said, but the first thing to doing that is coming up with all my own recipes, which is obviously pretty time consuming, and there's a lot of trial and error, which can get pretty expensive, and it takes up a lot of time. So what I'm currently working on, I have a list of, several different cake flavors and frostings and just ideas that I'm trying out, and I'm just going through them one at a time. And then after I bake them, my husband and I will sit down and we'll have a little cake testing, and we just sit there and we eat the whole piece, and we just go through every single bite saying what things we like, what things we don't like, and then I write it down. And then so, that will help me the next time I make that recipe to figure out, what I like about it and what I don't like about it.
Do you ever worry about the growing impossibility of coming up with original recipes?
Totally. I mean, I think that's kind of a thing that anyone who's into food, as a profession worries about, because how unique can your product get when so many different people are out there making so many products that are similar?
Yeah. You can go on the internet and find probably hundreds of thousands of recipes that are all just slight variations of each other.
I mean, I think that's what cooking is, though. I mean, if you really think about it, every recipe is just a variation of some other recipe. And I feel like for the most part, every recipe that everyone makes is probably out there in some sort of way.
Yeah.
The general rule is that if you want to make it your recipe, you can use a recipe that's online. You just have to change 3 things, and technically then it's yours. And now that can be one way that you look at it, but I feel like a better way is to just come up with the recipe yourself.
From scratch, yeah.
From scratch, just doing research and just testing different things.
If you were to change 3 things, does that mean amounts of things, or do you have to have completely different ingredients as 3 things? Like you could say, instead of a tablespoon of cinnamon, I'm going to use a teaspoon, and then that's different?
Right, yeah. So I don't really know how that works. Someone who was a chef actually told me that rule, and they just said you have to change 3 things, and that's it. So I'm sure it could actually be either thing, adding or subtracting ingredients or changing their amounts. But it really seems a little wrong to just change the amounts and not change the ingredients,
Yeah.
Just say like, I'm going to use slightly less of this or slightly more of that, and now it's mine.
Yeah, it's closer to
that doesn't really fly with me.
Plagiarism.
Totally, yeah.
I don't know. I wonder if we'll get to a point in cooking where you're not even expected to have custom recipes anymore. Like the database of the world's recipes is so large that restaurants are just openly saying, yeah, we used this website's recipe, instead of trying to make it seem like they have their own unique version when really they just change 3 ingredients. But
right. I think the thing that makes that different is generally the person who's coming up with these recipes, whether it be a chef or a baker, they have a lot of pride in what they're doing.
That's true.
So, they spend a lot of time reading, doing research, doing recipe testing, that kind of thing. And people have a lot of pride in that. So, maybe they work on this same recipe for 6 months and they come up with it and they're like, this is perfect. But maybe that recipe already exists somewhere out there. It's just they're the second one to make it or the third one to make it, but they put all that time into it and they came up with this recipe of what it was in the end, Yeah. So it's like, to them, that's still their hard work, their pride that they put into it. And I don't know, there's something very unique about people's individual passions and like the way that they come about a final product that makes it a lot more unique, I guess.
Yeah. I feel like, not that I'm a huge part of this world or really even in this world, but the world of like YouTube creators, a lot of the big ones are always worried about getting swooped on with their topics. They are like researching a topic, like educational YouTube. They're researching a topic for like a month or two, and then some other YouTuber could come along within that month and steal that topic out from under them and make a video faster. And then they're just like, oh no, you just ruined, like I was going to get 10 million views on that video, and I'm going to get 1 million because everybody just saw the same video a week beforehand.
Totally.
But I feel like those concerns are, to me, I feel like they're kind of illegitimate, because even if somebody swoops your idea from you, you put it out anyway, your own version of it is going to be original. Like it's wrapped up in like your own unique personality and who you are. So even if you make a video the same as another person about the same topic, they're still going to end up being really different videos.
Mm-hmm.
So I think as long as you feel like you created it, thought of it on your own, and it came from a place of thinking originally, if it ends up being a duplicate of what somebody else made, I don't think you really have to worry about that.
I agree. I think that's definitely true.
If you realize 6 months after you made a thing that another thing just like that exists, and from the outside perspective, they look like copies, I feel like that's okay.
Yeah, and I think it kind of also has to do with whether or not with your business, whether it be, a restaurant or YouTube or whatever it is, are you trying to make money or are you trying to make something that you're proud of?
Yeah.
Because if you're just trying to make money, let's say in a restaurant, you probably wouldn't care if you use recipes from anyone else, like other successful recipes from different chefs or people online. You wouldn't worry about that because you're just trying to make money. So you just try to pick the best recipe that you can that people like. Whereas if you're trying to do it because it's your passion project, you're going to work really hard on it. And even if somebody else does have a similar product, that's still something you specifically worked on and created, so it makes it a lot different if you're working on it in that way.
Can you sue a restaurant if you find out that they're using your recipe without giving you credit for it? Is that something that happens? Do you know?
I actually don't know, but I would assume that if you have a blog or something online or a cookbook, once you put that recipe out there, anybody can use it. That's what it's for, especially a blog that's free. Anyone can go onto that website. So I'm sure you make money off of, ad revenue and page views and other things like that on your blog. And I don't really know how else people on blogs make money or selling cookbooks or whatever it is. But yeah, I don't think anyone can or I wouldn't think that they can sue you if you're just putting out information like that, because that's what happens with the internet. Once it's out there, it's out there.
Yeah, I guess I like to think of as information or knowledge as being free, or at least it should be free. Charging people for knowledge, kind of like
you think people should be charged for knowledge,
No.
online?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I think it should be free.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It kind of makes me feel like a lot of the times schooling is a ripoff, when really you could probably find the same information in the textbook. You can find the textbooks online for free. It's just that you have to pay for the class to get, the world to see that you have a certification that you actually went to the class and learned the things.
Right. And people also want education to be super standardized.
Yeah.
So they want everyone to be coming out of college with the same exact type of information known. It's all these people graduating with a 4-year degree mandatorily have to know these things. So they know how to structure it when they go on to the next set of college or when they go into the real world. Everyone has to have this standard amount of knowledge. Whereas if you just let people go online, there's a ton of information out there and books. You can go to the library and, academic journals and stuff like that. But people are just going to have a wide variety of knowledge and you're not going to know what they actually know.
Yeah, that's true. I wonder if that's so bad, though.
Well, okay. Think about it in a medical perspective. Do you want someone who just went on the internet and just read a bunch of, articles oh, look at me, I'm a doctor, and then just to be going and being all right, I'm a surgeon now, I'm just going to cut you open with my internet reading,
Yeah, I suppose, it's probably different.
Some professions are obviously different than others, though. Yeah.
The expertise from actually going to school for 12 years is much more necessary than others, I guess.
Yeah. Like
being a doctor versus creative writing.
Definitely.
Creative writing, I don't understand why anybody goes for that. I guess maybe it forces you into writing if you want to be a writer, but you're lazy like I am. If you take a creative writing class, now it's there's an outside force telling you by the end of this month you need to write. So I guess that's an answer.
Yeah.
Because I find that within myself. I used to write short stories and I was proud of them. I was always proud of the ones I wrote. And then, I don't know, I just kind of stopped because it took up a lot of time, and there was all these other things I wanted to be doing. Like last year I was starting another story, and before I finished it, because I was like, there's 3 different paths the story could go. I didn't know which one to follow. So I just kind of lost interest. I was like, I don't know which one to choose. So I just didn't finish the story. Every day I was like, I could be writing right now, or I could be reading or doing this other thing that I want to do. So just kind of general laziness or lack of knowing what I wanted to do that made me not write. So I should probably take a creative writing class to force that.
Yeah, and then when someone tells you, hey, be creative and write the story, you're going to be like, I don't want to do that. I feel like that's like the whole thing with creativity is like, I feel like creativity is one of those things in people that it flourishes when you have nothing going on around you, when it's like, it's just coming out of you. It's not someone forcing it. It's just like who you are, you know? So in your free time, you can be creative because there's no rules, there's no structure. So like your actual creative self comes out in those moments. And then when you get put into something like a creative writing class and they tell you, hey, we need you to be creative, but I'm also going to give you a topic and it's also going to be graded on this like rubric of things, then I feel like that almost stunts your creativity. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it's really helpful for a lot of people though, but that's how I feel about creative stuff. It's like if someone's telling me to do it, I just can't do it.
I guess it probably depends on the person. For some people, deadlines are really motivating, and other people, they are not at all. And looking back on my school experience throughout all of school, I don't think deadlines are that much of a motivator for me. I would usually just not do work instead of like, oh, I've really got to get it done by Friday. I just didn't do it, or would wait until after Friday to do it because like a lot of the times it's a soft deadline.
Right.
You could actually turn it in late.
I was totally the opposite. Like all through school and college, I was like the person who they were like, yeah, your paper's due in 2 weeks. And I'd go to the library that night and finish it.
Wow. I mean,
but also that was good because then it was like, I didn't have to worry for the next 2 weeks about that paper. I was just like, hey, they told you about it today. You have all the information like fresh in your mind. Go to the library. And then I just go there, sit down for like 8 hours and just punch out like a bunch of papers or whatever it was. And then it was like for the next 2 weeks, everyone in class would be like, hey, have you started your paper? I don't know what to write about. And, you know, then it's the night before and everyone's like, oh man, I got to do that paper. And I'm like, I haven't even thought about that paper in literally 2 weeks because I finished it already.
That's probably just a better way to do it. Procrastinating really causes a lot of worry and anxiety.
Definitely.
For the whole 2 weeks following, you're dreading that dates to come up, and then the 6 hours beforehand, you're staying up all night, like frantically trying to finish it.
Right. Procrastination actually just stresses me out, to be honest. Like I think in general it does for everybody, but the thought of having to worry about something is what makes me get it done right away. It's like, I just want that thing out of my mind and done. And I know that if I just put my mind to it, I can sit down for today or tomorrow and just get it done. And then I don't have to have that worry, and I can take all of that mental energy and just put it towards something else.
There is a accompanying problem, though, that comes with that style of just doing it all right away. And this is something that my girlfriend told me about happened a lot in her college experience, especially with one particular teacher. He would assign homework for a certain day, and then when that day came, he would forget about it, and then the homework didn't actually need to have been done.
Oh man, that would definitely happen to me.
So then if it's you do this like essay that you had to write, and then it turns out you never actually had to write it. And if you're a procrastinator, you'd be like, yes, like
but look at all the knowledge that I got. I got all of the experience of working really hard and researching all this stuff to put into this paper. So technically I'm a step ahead of you.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you're like, yeah, I didn't have to do the paper. And I'm like, even though I don't get credit for the paper, I still did it. So now I'm like a step ahead in like writing and, you know, citing sources and all that crap that no one actually wants to do. Now I'm better at it just from that one paper.
True. That's a good point.
I feel like in those instances, you always have to look at it as just bettering yourself. Even if it doesn't actually count towards like a legitimate thing, I feel like it can count personally for you.
Yeah. That's probably a good through point to all of these things we're talking about. Just making yourself better for the sake of yourself.
Just for yourself and not for anybody else.
Yeah. Anyway, I have a different question for you, though. We were talking about originality before. Do you think that originality is actually possible? Do you think there's a such thing as true originality? Because the way I see it, when you think of a new idea, it's actually the product of subconscious influences from other things, and that it's all like, you can have this feeling of like the eureka moment where you just came up with a great thing, but if you somehow had the ability to trace it back to all the like precursor thoughts that led up to it, those thoughts would just come from your direct observations, like a thing your friend said, that TV show you watched, the dream you had, and then that dream itself comes back to a different thing that you experienced, and it's all just you stealing little by little from other sources.
So that's really interesting. I feel like when you look at it that way, yes, nothing in the world can be considered to have originality. But look at all of us, like we can all claim to have originality, but we're the parts of, two different people in all of our surroundings and everything that's happened to us in our life and our different perspectives. And that's what makes us original. But the only way to have that uniqueness about us is to have those influences from everything around us. So like when you say it how you said it, yeah, like maybe I think that a lot of things about me are original, but they are really just a product of the people I surround myself with, the knowledge that I take in, the hobbies that I pursue, just exposure to different things. And I don't know, I feel like that can still be considered originality because it's all the things about me that I'm interested in that affect me, but that makes me original because somebody else might interact with all those things but not see them the same way that I do.
Yeah. Yeah, instead of maybe the individual element being original, it's the combination of all the things that make you that provides the originality.
Totally.
Yeah.
Because I feel like for me, like just as an example, I could go out walking in the woods and take a hike. And for me, that could be a super spiritual experience, being like among the trees and the plants. And that sounds super hippie-ish, but like that's totally how I feel when I go out into the woods. It's just like an actual experience for me. Whereas somebody who's not very into that might just walk outside and be like, cool, a bunch of trees, sweet, a frog, awesome, a river, and then to be like, that was nice, but I don't really care. Whereas for me, it might be like a transformative experience for that day, it'll really affect me. So that's my original interpretation of that experience, and same with the other person.
So when you say that going outside is a spiritual experience, what do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, I don't mean like every single time I'm out in the woods, it's just like this magical wonderland. But for me in general, as a person, I've always felt very spiritually connected to nature and being outside. And I guess that's probably because I grew up in the country and I grew up on a farm. So, for me, on just a regular summer day, it was like, hey, go entertain yourself outside. If I didn't have like chores to do or something, it was like, go play in the yard, go play in the woods. And a lot of my free time was spent just hanging out in the woods and just, I don't know, collecting rocks and sticks and just being out in nature and listening to the wind blow through the trees and walking along rivers and stuff. Like that was my whole childhood. So I felt like I had a lot of time to, I don't know, be very like introspective and reflective of the things that were around me. Like basically as a kid, I wanted to be Pocahontas. I mean, okay, as an adult, I want to be Pocahontas, Disney Pocahontas, mind you. Like I wanted to go out in the woods by myself and have animals come up around me and just be my friends. And, I'd take like drawing notebooks down to the woods and I would sketch trees and just like the landscapes around me and stuff. And to me, I was just like so immersed in that experience. It just felt so natural for me to be there, even just by myself, just around everything that was there. And I feel like not everybody has that experience.
Yeah, some people look at trees and see firewood.
Totally.
or a house that could be built out of that tree rather than just the beauty of the tree itself.
Yeah, and I don't know. I've just always felt that way. And I just like the more people I talk to about it, like I think everyone can say they enjoy going out in nature. It's like, yeah, it's nice to go outside, but I don't know. I've always just felt, even since I was a little kid, that there's just something different about it for me. Like I could totally picture myself at some point in my life or in another lifetime going and living out in the wilderness, and doing like survivalist stuff, like building a cabin out in the woods and purifying my own water and like hunting animals and stuff like that, in an alternate life, like I could see myself doing those things and just living very primitively because I think that's so natural. I mean, what's more natural than that?
Do you ever watch any of those shows that are like that?
I don't like reality TV because I feel like it's really, a lot of it's staged. Like I'm sure a lot of it's very real and it's very interesting and cool to me. I do listen to like some podcasts and I'll read some books about that kind of stuff, and I'm always generally interested in it, but I don't generally watch reality TV.
That's fine. You're overall not missing out on much. I think I get exposed to more reality TV than I would like to.
Oh, yeah.
There are some interesting ones that have to do with surviving out in the wilderness that to me don't feel entirely staged. Like one in particular is called Alone. There's at least
Wait,
one...
I was just listening to a Joe Rogan podcast about the guy who was on that show, or a guy who was on that show.
Did he win?
I don't know. It was kind of him talking about his whole life plus being on that show. Okay. And I listened to two guys recently who did like the whole survivalist wilderness thing. So I can't even picture which one was on Alone. But the one guy that I was listening to his thing, he had kind of always felt like this connection with nature. And he's like, hey, I'm going to go out to the woods, the Alaskan wilderness, and I'm just going to trek out there and I'm going to live there. And so one day he drove his van like 600 miles on this gravel road up to the wilderness of Alaska, and he parked it on the side of the road, and he just got out of his car with all his stuff, and he walked 60 miles into the woods, or just into the wilderness. And he had kind of planned this all out like a year beforehand or something, but he lived out there for 17 years.
Wow.
So he had, got supplies dropped in and came back to town every now and then just so he could like have his basic stuff. And his family actually moved out there with him at some point. And he had a baby living out there. It was his wife and his newborn baby living in this primitive cabin that he had just built. I was like,
that's awesome.
That's the most amazing thing I've ever heard. And it was like at some point they like ran out of food, and they were just eating these like weasels and just like really weird food. And his wife had just had this baby, and they were all starving, and they got chased by wolves, and people are falling through the lake ice. And it's just, there's nobody out there. I mean, this is like the middle of nowhere. It's like you against nature, which is just so cool to me. Like I literally have goosebumps right now because that's just so amazing to me that people nowadays are interested in doing that.
It's really cool that that's even still a possibility today, that the world isn't so connected and on the grid that you can't do that. The fact that you can just go to Alaska and live in the wilderness, I feel like is, I don't know, it's reassuring in a way.
And so it's not all just like, hey, drive up there and just go anywhere you want. A lot of it, you do need permits, or you need to talk to the state about like, hey, I want to go out on this chunk of land. I've surveyed it. There's a lake, there's rivers, and there's wildlife. Like, can I get a permit to build a cabin? So there is still, some
red tape to
cross and like dealing with the government and all this other crap that you have to do. But like once you can get those things, it's pretty much like, hey, go do your thing.
Yeah.
Which is just so cool to me when people move off the grid in today's day and age, because I feel like everything now is it's just the digital age. Everything is so fast and so fast paced, and just like the technology and all that kind of thing. And when people want to actually be removed from that and go back to the primitive state without those types of things, I think that's really inspiring.
Yeah, everything right now is so connected, except it's connected artificially. It's like fake relationships where, I don't know, there's something pure and real about just living off in the woods.
Totally. That's how I feel like all the time.
Yeah.
Like with social media, for example, I mean, this is just average example, but I mean, I think it's great. I think it can be used as a tool. I think it's fun to tell people what you're doing. And, I have social media that I use, but I also think it's so stupid because it's like we all post all this crap online and say, hey, I went to the beach today. Hey, I did this. Hey, I baked a cake. Hey, here's me in a cool outfit. It's like, great. Why don't we talk in real life? Like, we can't even talk on the phone. People don't actually like hang out anymore. It's just like, hey, let's go to this place so we can take a picture and tell everyone about it online. And then the actual human connection gets lost because people don't talk about anything anymore. Like when you meet up with friends who you've seen all their stuff on social media, oftentimes you don't even talk about that stuff because it's just in the back of your mind. It's like a silent conversation you've already had with them. Yeah. It's like, oh, you saw that they had went on this vacation, or you saw that they went to this restaurant. So we don't have to talk about it. Let's just talk about other things now. But it's like you should be talking about all the things that are happening to you and not just, I don't know. It just it's so artificial to me.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons why I don't have Instagram, because Facebook is an awful place. But Instagram, I especially feel that artificial, like posy, like look at me at this place, like here are little snapshots of the best moments of my life, making you feel bad about your life.
Totally. It's just a highlight reel.
Yeah. And it's so unrealistic. Like people only are putting on their highlights. So that's not an actual depiction of what their life is really like.
Totally. And I feel like the whole selfie culture thing, which I don't know. I don't know if that's still a thing because I was never into that. Yeah. But that's just like people's Instagrams, it makes me feel really sad when someone adds me on Instagram and I look at their page and it's just selfies of them. Just pictures of their face, the entire thing. Like they're not even doing anything interesting. They're just like, here's my face. Here's my face again. Now my face is in my car. Now I'm on my couch. Now I'm in the bathroom. It's like, great. That's awesome. Like it's super great to have like awesome confidence and want to like feel good about yourself. Like I'm not shitting on that, but it's just like, what's the point of just repeatedly showing people pictures of your face?
And
that's so surface level.
Yeah. I also think a lot of it's kind of the opposite of confidence. It seems like a lot of the social media posts are a way to try and gain self-esteem through, the validation
through likes
of other
and
people.
Comments. Yeah, validation.
Like if you had confidence, then you wouldn't post the picture.
Yeah, you wouldn't feel the need to be like, hey, everyone, look at this. Please tell me that I look good.
Yeah, and I realize that's not true for all people. I'm sure there are people with plenty of confidence that do post on Instagram. But
definitely. It's not just like a black and white thing.
Yeah, but still, a lot of the time it's like, are you posting this because, like, I don't know, you're proud of whatever this picture represents, or is it because you're trying to get the likes and the reactions?
Totally. And yeah, I don't know. I like using Instagram more as, I refer to it kind of as my personal portfolio.
Yeah.
Because like I'll post things that are just like things that I think are pretty, like nature or going on a hike or something like that. But also a lot of the things I post are like projects I'm working on. So something I baked, something I cooked, something I painted, like, and I'm not doing it to get likes. I'm just like, hey, I did this thing today and it made me personally very happy. So I feel happy about it and I'm going to tell you guys about it.
Yeah.
And that's, I don't know. I feel like for me, that's an okay way to use social media.
Yeah. I think a lot of the thing I use Facebook for is a photo album where I don't need to actually pay for the space. It's like Facebook space, but I can have my photos up there.
Totally.
Because I don't want to clog up my computer with it or pay, however much a month for some sort of iCloud drive.
Yeah.
One reason that kind of reminds me of what you were just saying before, that I almost hate like taking pictures or like being part of pictures with people, is because I have lots of memories of being a child, and I would go on vacations with my family, and my mom would always make us pose like in front of the Epcot ball at Disneyland or whatever. All these moments, like, stop what you're doing, like
stop having fun,
stand in a line,
pretend like you're having fun,
exactly.
Look at the camera, make an artificial moment, pretend it was real.
Yes, and it's like that kind of made me learn to hate photos, at least those kinds of photos, because it's just a completely artificial way. I much prefer just when somebody kind of surreptitiously takes a snapshot of a genuine moment,
a candid moment.
Yeah. And if, people are having fun in that picture that they don't know is being taken, that's a great picture.
Totally. There's so much more happiness in a candid picture where there's a group of people just having fun, or even one person, than like, okay, we had fun all weekend by this lake, doing all this stuff. Now go stand in front of the lake and pose. You know what I mean? It's just so much more genuine when it's an actual moment that they might not know about, or that you're taking that picture.
Yeah. It seems to me like some strange artifact of back when portraits were drawn, or when pictures took 3 minutes to happen, where people were like, okay, we need to stand still and we need to be like prepared so this picture doesn't, mess up. Except now that we can take pictures in a snapshot without people even realizing it, we're still doing it like that. We're still posing for a portrait that some guy's going to be painting for 12 hours.
Right, yeah. And also the other thing with digital photography versus something like a Polaroid or something where you can only take one photo of that moment is that, I find myself being caught up in this. When I'm trying to take a picture of something, I know that I have an unlimited amount of space, or the unlimited amount of pictures to take the perfect picture, Yeah. And you always feel like when you take a picture of something, you want it to look nice, and you know that, well, I don't like that one little thing about it, so I can take another one, and then I can take another one, and then when does it stop, though?
Yeah.
So you can really get caught up in that if you're really trying to take a picture of something, not even just yourself, but a picture of anything and make it look really nice. You know that you have unlimited amount of photos that you can take. And that's actually why a couple summers ago I bought a Polaroid camera, and then I started using that, in tandem with, my phone, but mostly I tried to take a Polaroid picture of particular moments. And it wasn't necessarily always candid, but it was like we went on vacation and I'd say, hey, the whole time we're here, I'm going to take 5 Polaroids or something, just like set a number to it. And it's like once a day when we're doing an activity that we like, and I would just take one of me or something that we're doing, and it's just like it captures that moment, and you can't capture it again unless you want to go through really expensive Polaroid film,
Yeah.
So then it was just that one photo. I couldn't edit it, I couldn't change it to make it different. It was like, this is the photo and this is that moment, and that's what you get. And I really liked that feeling. It almost felt like it took a pressure off of taking photos, because oftentimes that photo would come up and it'd be like, that is not anything what it looks like outside, or like, why do I look this way? And it was just like, it kind of pointed out all the things that are wrong with us having the ability to edit all these photos all the time and take so many of them. It's just like, this is the picture, like what that moment felt like. It doesn't matter necessarily what it looks like, but here it is,
Yeah, I really like that uneditability of Polaroid photos, except I kind of feel like there's an opposite problem with the Polaroids. Because, with the digital, you can just take a snapshot that takes, 100 in half a second and go through all of your selfies looking for just the right fraction of a second that was perfect. So like you spend an hour looking through 100 photos, you're like, that's the one.
And you spend an hour. That's also the other problem. It's just like you spend so much time. If you don't have that time to spend because there's one photo that you can't change, it's just like, this is the moment, on to the next part of my life.
That is a benefit of the Polaroids. But then I feel like the drawback is the fact that you mentioned that they're so expensive. It's like $8 for a package of 10 photos.
Totally.
So,
But that makes you capture the rare moment. So you can't go around being like, okay, I'm having a party today. I'm going to take 100 photos and figure out later which ones I like. It's like you capture that moment and that's the one you capture and don't try to capture it again. This is it. It's right here.
yeah.
Puts that pressure on.
Hopefully it's like that. But I have the problem where it's like, on the one hand, with the digital camera or with the iPhone, I can take unlimited photos. With the Polaroid, I have like 5 photos. So it's kind of like I never want to take a photo because I don't know if this is the right moment to capture.
Right. But that's also the thing. It's like, yeah, you have to pick the right moment to capture. Because I also feel like with the digital age, and especially social media, people feel like they have to capture every single moment ever with their phone. And I'm super guilty of this. Like going to do anything, I feel like I'm not allowed. It almost feels like you're not allowed to go do something without taking a picture. So there's proof that you were there doing a thing. And I'm like, I've been recently trying to work my way out of that sort of perspective. Because, I mean, think of when we were kids. Like, we didn't take a picture every time we went and did every single thing we ever did.
Yeah,
but
take
nowadays
a picture of every
we
one of
do.
your meals.
Yeah, no one took pictures of their food ever. You know, like no one just cared about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's one thing that I'm not guilty of. I don't remember the last time I took a picture with my phone. And if you look through my phone, I don't think there's a single picture of me in it.
Yeah.
The only
I bet you're lying and it's just like a whole selfie reel.
I think the only pictures
Me looking cute in the bathroom.
that I have are like of my cats that I had. And then, I don't know, if I like go to a place to have a vacation or something, then I take pictures there. But still even not a whole lot of pictures. Because like you mentioned before, what often happens is I see a thing, it looks amazing. I take a picture of it like,
That looks
the
like
sunset
shit.
looks better in real life.
With my eyes.
Yeah.
So let's try to capture what my eyes see.
Yeah.
And then you spend all this time essentially ruining what was a good moment by looking at this beautiful thing. And then you kind of, it almost can make you feel stressed. Like, no, I have to take a picture of this thing and make it look like what I see.
Have you ever seen The Secret Life of Walter Mitty?
No.
It's one of my favorite movies. It features Ben Stiller as the main character and the director, and it's him not in a goofy role. It's more of a drama than a comedy. There are comedic moments. But the premise of that is that he's a daydreamer who works a monotonous job, who like he wants to have amazing experiences in his life, so he daydreams about them, and they don't actually happen. And then he finally has the opportunity to make them happen. He's tracking down this photographer across the world, and he finally finds a photographer in the Himalayas because this photographer is trying to capture like a rare image of a snow leopard in its natural habitat. He finds him, climbs up the mountain, and then they see like across a little valley there's a snow leopard. And then the photographer isn't taking a picture of it, and Ben Stiller's like,
"What are you doing?
Why aren't you taking a picture of it?" And the photographer's like, "This moment is too beautiful to take a picture of."
Oh, I love that so much.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So like the whole purpose of his journey was to go here to get a picture, so to be on the cover of the great magazine, and then he realized in the moment that
I mean, just think
it's better
you're
to
always
just live
behind that lens and you're only living this as a still digital image, but you could be living the actual moment.
Yeah.
It's like I feel like we all feel very obsessed with the idea of remembering every single detail of every single thing that we do. And that's why we want to take so many pictures of it. But I mean, I was just going through my hard drive the other day because I took a bunch of pictures off my phone, and there were like over 1,000 from the past like 1 or 2 years. And it's like, when am I ever going to go back and look at all of those? Yeah. And it's one of those things where it was like a self-reflective moment of, why do I have all these pictures? Like, sure, a lot of them I will go back and look at, and I do from time to time, but why did I need that picture of my burger that day? What was up with this picture of the grass? Like, yeah, it looks great, but like, I know what grass looks like. Why did I have to take that picture?
I wonder how this sort of thing is going to affect people's children and grandchildren, in the sense that right now I could look through a few photographs of what my grandmother was like, and I have like 6 of them, and each of them are like enlightening about what her life might have been like or what she looked like when she was 20. And I feel like for somebody who's, say, my grandchild, they're going to find thousands of photos, and
thousands.
It might become like there's so many that you no longer care, or that you're like,
I mean, I feel that way about my own photos. There's so many that I don't even want to look at all of them. And it's like, they're only from the past maybe 5 years. Think of all these pictures that I've taken, probably thousands, honestly.
Yeah.
And that's just 5 years of my life. I have my whole life left to live. Am I going to continuously keep taking that many pictures? But it's also like, we have the ability to, so why not? Whereas people like our parents' age or older than that, it was like digital or disposable cameras or stuff like that. So they didn't really have unlimited amounts of things. But that's another con that comes with having unlimited amounts of data, of
space,
picture storage. Yeah.
Yeah, my mom liked to scrapbook a lot. That was like her pastime. And she still had a lot of pictures, but comparatively to now, not that many. So she would have like, this is one scrapbook of these years, this is one scrapbook of these years, and total each scrapbook has, I don't know, like 100 pictures in it. Nowadays, I feel like what we're preparing to do with future children is hand them digital scrapbooks that are like 100,000 pictures worth.
It's like, hey, here's my hard drive. Here's my hard drive. Check out my life. And they're gonna be like, no.
Yeah, this is every moment of my life documented
every day.
It's like, now you know me. They're not gonna look through any of it probably.
Yeah, they're gonna just like scroll through, click on one, scroll through, click on another, and it's like, why do we feel like we need so many photos? I feel like we're trying to live such artificial lives almost, because we're more focused on capturing the moment with a picture than actually living in that moment.
Yeah. Same thing with video too. I've got a solid terabyte of video on my computer that I'm always trying to delete because I'm never going to use it again. Like if I film something in a different country or whatnot, then it seems more like I should keep it. But then I think, am I ever going to look through this video again? Maybe, maybe not. Is it really good to arrange my life based on the chance that I will when it's taking up so much space?
Right. Like how much do we need?
Yeah.
Of all of these things, how much digital documentation do we actually need?
Really, we need zero. Because if you think about people who lived in, I don't know, 1800 even, the average person didn't have any portraits of them and there was no cameras around. So they just had no documentation.
Right.
And they were fine.
Yeah, and like what you were saying,
Presumably.
like look at the pictures you have of your grandma. You have like 6 pictures. So, but you can tell a lot about her life by just those 6 pictures. And I feel like we could do the same and pass it on to our kids or grandkids, but we don't need all of these pictures. Like they just don't need to see all of them.
Yeah.
There's like personal boundaries that need to be drawn. And I feel like so many people don't even know that they need a boundary. And I'm cognizant of that all the time. Like sometimes we'll go on vacation and I'll stop and be like, I have to take a picture of this because I gotta, put it on Instagram, or I gotta put it on Facebook because I need people to see that I was here. But I don't need people to see that I was there. Maybe if I'm really, really happy and I see something wonderful, I just want to show someone about it. But I really don't need to keep taking all these dumb pictures that no one needs to see this.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's getting caught up in the culture. Now
I don't like the culture now.
Yeah.
But I find myself getting caught up in it, and I
to be popular, to be valued, you have to post cool pictures.
Or just like validated.
Yeah.
Just because then you see.
Or to be normal even.
Yeah, because then I see lots of people who are younger than me, like the Zoomer generation, and I'm like, wow, they're so fashionable. Wow, they're doing cool things. And then I start to feel old and like, maybe I should be doing cool things. Maybe I should be, showing people what I'm doing. And it's like, no, stop. You don't need that. Like and then I feel so stupid because I have a lot of friends who are in like their 50s and 60s, and they're like my really close friends. And like when I hang out with them, I mean, I have some friends that I've been hanging out for 5-6 years who are in that age range, and we've never taken a picture together. We've never even taken a picture when we've gone to do anything. But I have so many good memories with them, and that's because we're not sitting on our phones. We're not trying to capture any moments. We're just having like real conversations, real moments, experiencing the actual world instead of like figuring out a way to document our situation.
That's one thing that's always infuriated me is hanging out with somebody and they're on their phone or distracted by their phone frequently while you're trying to
totally
hang out with them and actually spend
especially
time with them.
one-on-one time. Like if you're in a group, it's less noticeable, but if you're hanging out with one person and they just have their phone right here, and every time it buzzes and you're in a conversation, they just stop and pick it up. They're just like, oh, hold on, gotta check this. Hold on, gotta check this. It's like we're hanging out for like 3 hours or something. Like you could probably not look at your phone. And then, I don't know, I just feel like it's rude and it's just unnecessary unless it's something that actually has to be looked at.
Which
generally it's not.
Yeah.
Like it almost never is.
And I feel like if it is, people call each other, like you were talking about before, so rarely that if it is something that you really need to look at, they could call you for it. Like if your child is dying, or like your girlfriend just had her arm sawn off by a serial killer down the street.
Totally.
You could get a call about that.
You might want to call about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, that's another thing with our generation. Like our generation and younger, people are afraid of phone calls. Like I can't even tell you the last time I've called one of my friends. And honestly, one of the last times I did call one of my friends, they were like freaked out that I was calling them. And they were like, they'd like answer the phone. They're like, yeah, it's always like, what's wrong? Not just like, hey, how's it going? Or like, what's up? It's just like, hello, why are you calling me? Like, can't you just text me? And it's like, no, why can't I just talk to you? Like, why do I have to spend all this time texting you this message when honestly, I'd be fine with like a couple-minute conversation. I mean, that's what we all used to do.
Yeah.
We used to just call each other before the days of texting and just, even if you only had 5 minutes of stuff to say. But no one wants to call each other anymore because obviously texting is quicker.
Yeah. Did you do that a lot as a kid? Did you have lots of phone calls with your friends?
I did.
Were they like long late night phone calls?
They totally were.
Stereotypical teenage
And
ones.
then we had, dial-up internet. So when my mom wanted to go on the computer, it's like, get off the phone.
Yeah. I was never a kid who did that. I would call my friends in short intervals to be like, hey, can I come over? Like, hey, do you want to come over? But I never really called them to chat.
Maybe that's more of a female thing. Like girls want to gossip. They want to talk about lots of stuff. We can sit on the phone for hours and just chat about whatever. Yeah. I mean, I never called up any of my guy friends really and talked for hours on the phone. But, well, the one that I did, he was gay. So I don't know if that counts. I feel like maybe that's more on the feminine spectrum.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it was just me and female friends.
Yeah, I guess I would have long phone calls with girlfriends in high school. But yeah, not anyone
else.
Friends,
yeah.
All this thinking of the huge amounts of pictures that we're just keeping on our devices and on Facebook and online. It kind of makes me wonder about how, maybe not archaeology, but how historians will manage looking back at this time frame in 100, 200 years.
They just won't. I mean, how could you possibly sift through all that information?
There's going to need to either be some amazing algorithm does it, or half the human population are dedicated to sifting through old information.
Right. I mean, actually, though, what happens when we die with all of our information? All my photos are on a hard drive. So do I just say, here, kids, here's my life on a hard drive? And then by that time, hard drives or something like that will just be obsolete. And then all of your, photos or whatever it is just going to be stored somewhere else. And it's just going to be lost to time.
Probably. Yeah, I wonder if there's some company nobody knows about that is just collecting everybody's images for whatever purposes. Just anybody who dies.
Yeah.
All their images that weren't specified where they go in their will, they just buy them for a cent each, and then you just go on some website and there's stock photos that are just photos from people's phones that have died.
Yeah. You know what I do really love though is going through old photo albums, ones at my grandparents' house or my mom's house or something like that. I love that. And recently in the last year sometime when I had went and visited my mom, I went through all the ones from my childhood and when I was a baby and stuff. And I just feel like that's how photos should be. You don't need, 10,000 photos of 1 year of your life. And it was just going through every single year and having just the physical photo. It's this physical photo was printed 20 years ago. And it was this photo. And it was from a disposable camera. So, you could scan it into something now and have another copy. But this is the copy. There's memories stored in this photo, from this exact moment. It's not just I don't know. It's not like it is nowadays.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to actually get a bunch of photo albums and print off stuff. But now we have this huge problem with what pictures and then going through thousands and thousands of images. Whereas back then it was just hey, this camera holds 20 pictures and then you take it to Walmart.
I did that recently. Well, not that recently. For Christmas, I decided as a gift to my parents, which probably sounds awful as a gift, but I got them pictures of myself because they didn't have any in their houses and they told me they wanted them. So I went to Walmart and printed off actual images, and it's kind of brought me back to
I love printing out photos.
I hadn't actually held a
physical
photo in years.
See, I still do print off photos, not of every single experience, obviously, but I actually just recently. So I did decide that when I go on trips or anything like that, I'm going to take the photos, and then right when I get back from that trip, I'm going to go print those off at Walgreens or whatever. So I recently went on a trip 2 weeks ago. And then the first day that I had off after that, I got all the photos. I put them on the Walgreens Photo Center and I got them printed, and I have the physical photos now. So who knows how long I'm going to actually keep up printing out photos. But
Do you have them in an album or in?
No, not yet.
Up anywhere?
Just for right now, I'm going to keep them in the envelopes and just label what it was, summer 2020 or this vacation or whatever it is.
When you're a 40-year-old mom, you can spend all your time scrapbooking.
Totally.
Your existing
I'll be
photos.
oh my God, kids, come check out this thing I did 20 years ago. And they're going to be we don't care.
They're going to have their own stockpiles that are 10 times as big as your own.
Right.
I've got another question, though, kind of related to what you were talking about before with the cake decorating. Did you when you decorated cakes, did you print out those weird cake photos that you can eat?
Oh, edible images. Yes, we did those.
Do you need a special machine for that?
You do. It's an actual edible image printer, and it prints on sugar paper. So you actually order this paper that you send through the printer that is a literal sheet of flexible sugar paper.
How thick is it?
I mean, not very thick, but definitely way thicker than a piece of actual paper. Probably thicker than cardstock, but not any substantial amount of thickness.
That stuff always amazed me as a kid.
Oh my God, it's so cool. It was always really creepy, though, when people would be like, my kid's graduating. Can you put his picture on the cake? And then you just picture people just cutting through, like, this image of this kid on the cake. Just like when it's physical, like, faces and not, a cartoon or something for a kid's cake. I always just thought that was weird. Like, why does your face have to be on the cake? That's so strange to me.
Yeah, I had some cakes like that. I remember they were just, like, regular pictures put on a cake. That does seem kind of weird. And then, you're the one who gets to eat your own face.
Yeah, it was cool though, because you get this box full of just like sugar sheets of paper, and you could actually, if you wanted to, they have these, it's edible ink markers that you could use, and you could draw on that sugar paper if you wanted, or people use it also on fondant. But if you took that sugar paper, you could take those markers and you could physically draw something on it and then cut it out to whatever shape, and you could put that on the cake too.
That's cool.
So we didn't do that a lot, but I did have some markers there that I would practice stuff with every now and then. But yeah, edible images they're pretty cool.
Did you have to have a person in charge of making sure photos were okay to print on a cake?
That person was me.
Did you see any messed up photos?
No. So I feel like for the most part, they knew when they came in whether or not like a photo should be printed.
Yeah.
I don't really remember anything that was super weird. More just like, why would you want that on a cake versus like, that's not okay, don't show me that.
Yeah, I wonder how often that happens at Walgreens when you're getting your photos printed out. Because isn't there like the guy behind the counter, like he sees the photos pop up on his computer?
My friend used to actually work at the Walmart photo center, and she said when you get photos that people want to print that are like nude photos or just something that's like you really shouldn't be having on there, they actually just throw them away and they won't even tell you about it. So like they'll get all those pictures printed out, because I think it just automatically gets sent to the printer, and then they go through the photos before they put them into the envelope. And if there's any photos on there that are just photos that they can't like legally sell to you, they'll just throw them in the garbage. So yeah, that answers your
really
question, Wade, about getting your
colonies.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's sad for you if you were trying to get nude photos taken. If that's where this conversation was headed, you probably can't do that. You might want to get your own like specialized printer at home.
Yeah, that's not what I was envisioning. I've got a different question I wanted to ask, not having anything to do with nude photos. I thought a little activity that would be fun, completely unrelated to everything we've talked about so far.
Okay.
If I go through certain things that are features of how we live, and you can tell me whether you think they should be legal or illegal.
Okay.
Just because I want to see what you think on these things. And then if they're illegal, if they should be jailable offenses or just like, fines or whatnot.
Okay, sounds good.
So speeding in your car.
I mean, definitely illegal, I feel like.
Finable as currently.
Definitely. Not put in jail, I don't feel like, unless it's a very like reckless endangerment type of thing where you're going like 120 miles an hour,
Like swerving.
Right. I mean, obviously there's like other people on the road, there's family, there's kids,
Do you think it should be constant? Like one time I got pulled over in the middle of the night for speeding. There were literally no cars on the road except for the police car who was waiting, and got like a $200 fine for speeding. Yeah, sure, I was speeding, but I wasn't endangering anyone aside from myself.
But how do you know that there isn't someone like biking on the side of the road or walking that you can't see? I mean, there's all these other variables, like the cop also doesn't know that.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, no, I can totally see where you're going. It's like, if there's nobody else around and there's nothing in my way, why can't I go really fast?
Yeah.
Why can't I speed?
I think that's how, I might be wrong because I haven't been there myself, but I think that's how Germany does it with the, what is it, the Autobahn?
Autobahn?
Yeah, that huge highway. Like, I don't think there is a speed limit. I think it just goes as fast as you want as long as it makes sense.
Yeah. So is there like an actual cap on that? Is there a capped speed where you could get pulled over? Or is it just totally drive at whatever speed you want?
I think it might be drive at whatever speed you want. And then it's probably up to the police officer's discretion to pull you over if they think you're going reckless.
Like recklessly driving, yeah. I mean, yeah, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's been there for a while, which I believe it has,
yeah.
I mean, there's probably obviously reasons why they think that's okay.
So then everybody could just drive 140 miles per
I think
hour.
the highway is for sure different because you have all these different lanes. Yeah. So people who want to drive slower and safer can stay in the right lane. Anyone who wants to go really fast, obviously goes in the left lane.
Yeah. I was on the freeway when this happened. So I think that reduces the likelihood of somebody walking or biking on
definitely,
the road.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was a little bit annoyed. And the fact that I was not speeding incredibly. It was like a 60 and I was going like 75 or something.
Oh, that's how fast I always drive.
I know. I
mean, also, does anybody in Milwaukee drive the speed limit on the highway?
I don't think so.
There's no
always
chance.
Speed.
Totally, me too.
There's this road on the way to work that's like a 30, except when I go 30, it feels like I'm in molasses. So I always go like 60 there, which is probably a solid fine if I got pulled over for going double the speed limit. But 60 is what feels reasonable on that road.
I feel like also things like that, like when speed limits are really low and you're wondering why, I feel like if you don't know that area well, it could be because there's a school 1 block away, but you might not even be able to see that, or there's like deaf children in the area, or, you know, there's some sort of factor that's making it where the speed limit is slower, besides it being, you know, a place where there's like frequent turnoffs where people have to be slowing down. Because that's like usually why in the city, obviously you can't just be going like 60 miles an hour because there's people constantly stopping in front of you to turn or whatever like that. So slowing down from 60 is way different than slowing down from 30.
Yeah. When I was in France on the freeways there, the way they do it, instead of having constant speed on the freeways and then you just take exits that go off and then you slow down once you get onto the exit, every exit is like a roundabout. So you constantly have to slow down every like 2-mile chunk, which I don't know. I feel like that probably might just naturally disincentivize speeding, because the fact that if you start going 80 miles an hour, you're going to have to stop in like 13 seconds for this roundabout.
Right. So you would probably just end up, that would be annoying to do anyway. So you just start going a slower speed.
Rather than having to put patrol officers every 3 miles to check. It's just that you're going to crash if you try to go on this roundabout at 80 miles an hour. That's just physics.
I mean, can you just picture Americans, though, if we went from having a speed limit on the highway to it being just an unlimited speed? People would go wild. Yeah. We are so stupid here.
That's true.
Everyone here is dumb.
And likes to drink and drive.
Oh my gosh, they love that. I mean, I'm sure people everywhere really love that, but I just feel like America is its own particular type of people.
Very, unique stupidity that goes on.
Like a lot of self-entitlement. They think they can just do whatever they want.
And in other countries, especially, I don't know, like less developed countries, the driving is like way more seemingly reckless and crazy, except people are fine most of the time. I've never seen an accident. And the roads are like really narrow and people are passing each other with like, if they had like side view mirrors, half the time they'd hit each other. It's just like you could reach out your finger and touch the car because
sounds like they're good drivers.
Yeah, they must be. And then there's all these videos you can find on YouTube of traffic intersections in India, and they're just going. It's like a beehive. They're just crisscrossing each other without stopping.
Can you picture if we did that here, though?
Yeah,
I just feel like that wouldn't work. Everyone would just be crashing.
Yeah, it's weird because it's like the less regulated roads make for better drivers because they have to be in order not to crash all the time.
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I feel like there are definitely pros and cons to whether or not it should be illegal.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to pick one or the other, but I feel like, I don't know. I just feel like in general here in America, it's probably good if there is some sort of limit set. But sometimes I feel like on the highway in particular, it could be a faster speed or just varied.
How do you feel about what could happen with self-driving cars? I guess will happen with self-driving cars, where the car is just going to go at the speed limit of whatever road it's on, so that like within your vehicle is the constraint of how fast you can go.
I just think self-driving cars just in themselves are creepy. Like, I don't like that. That makes me just like really uncomfortable, honestly. And that's so futuristic sounding for me. And I'm very much like removed from that type of thing. Like, I want to go back in time. Like, I want to go back and live in like the 80s or something, with some modern perks, obviously.
Yeah.
So something like that. Self-driving cars, like, I know that's a real thing that's potentially even happening or almost happening at this point,
Yeah.
That's in the works, and I don't really like that. I think that what movie is that like? It just reminds me of, I think it's WALL-E. Is that the one where they're all just in the chairs?
Yes.
Yeah, and they're just kind of like, they're just mindless drones. They have like no brain. They have like no skills anymore, and they just consume because somebody else is doing all of the responsible things for them. Or I haven't seen that movie in a while, but just that general
that's
gist.
Basically what's going on with the humans in that movie.
But we don't want that. I mean, maybe some people want that, but we shouldn't want that. And we shouldn't be moving towards things like that. But also, we don't want to be stunting technological growth.
Yeah. It's really tricky because I feel like with these technological advances, it's always double-edged, where any particular new invention is making people, they need to actually use their intelligence or their like skills less, because now something is taking its place. Like, instead of actually having to do physical work, this robotic thing is doing it for you. Or instead of having to think, this algorithm is doing it for you. Except on the other hand, now it does free up more time that humans don't have to spend toiling over things. For instance, with the self-driving cars, all that time that you spend, especially if you're a person who drives a lot, all that time you spend on the road, now you can be spending like reading a book or napping or like doing something with your hands and eyes that can be productive for your life.
Like personally beneficial to
Yeah.
you. Totally. Yeah, no, I can see that as why there would be positive sides to that. But just personally for me, I'm just like so against that type of thing where people get so removed from things and just technology takes over. I'm a very hands-on type of person, and I don't know, I believe in working with your hands and being able to like I feel like people want to work less hard, that's kind of like where humans in general have gone. You know, we used to have no technology and no tools, no nothing, and now we have all of these amazing things, which is super fantastic. But I feel like personally for me, I don't want to lose touch with the natural side of things and being able to physically use your hands to make something or do things. I feel like that takes away from life entirely in itself and the capabilities that human beings have to do all of these things. Yeah, like I'm willing to spend more time doing something that a robot could do, honestly, than just being like, hey, this robot could do this job for me and I'm going to go read a book. I mean, I don't know. There definitely would have to be some sort of fine balance.
Yeah, that balance is always hard to find. It's like, I don't know, you typically always appreciate things that you have done yourself more than things that were just handed to you.
Totally.
Like when you make a meal yourself, it's like tastes, well, I don't know if it literally tastes better, but it feels like it tastes better when you make it yourself. Because
you put all that work into it.
Yeah. And then you got some sort of like satisfaction out of it that you know how to make this dish now.
Yeah. I mean, like you physically doing things with your hands, that's like you're learning muscle memory. But the more times you do any one particular thing, the better you get at it. And then you become skilled in that particular thing, whatever it is. Whereas if you're just having a robot do it, like at what point does it stop? At what point do we have a robot read for us? And then we put a chip in our brain and it just automatically uploads all the information from that book or whatever it was that we wanted to read. And at what point are we all just sitting here not doing anything ever and we're just getting fed all this information?
Yeah.
Have you read the book Feed?
No. What's that?
Well, I don't remember it anymore really that much, but it was something like that. It was very much like living in a very futuristic way where, man, I don't even want to describe it because I haven't read it since like 6th grade or something. But it was something kind of like that, like being fed information into your brain. And that's like how you lived your entire life.
It kind of reminds me of a Calvin and Hobbes comic strip where Calvin imagined he didn't want to wake up for school or something. Have you ever read any Calvin and Hobbes?
Not really, but I briefly know who that is. And
I feel like you'd like them a lot. They're filled with like reverence for nature. But one of the strips is Calvin is like doesn't want to get up for school, so he envisions that like the world he lives in, there's just like chips that they insert into your mushy brain. Like his head opened up and you see his brain and they put like a chip in there and it like downloads all the information that you're going to learn that day. So you don't have to go to school. He just goes back to bed.
Yeah. I mean, I joke about that type of thing where it's just like, oh man, today I really don't want to do this thing. Or there's a lot of effort that's going to go into whatever activity that I want to do. Can't someone just, put a chip in my brain and it's like, yeah, you know all that stuff or it's already done for you, Yeah. Like, yeah, that's a nice idea, but I don't think I'd ever want to live in that reality.
And I think the thing that's really joyous about learning is the learning. It's not like the knowing now.
It's the process of
like
getting to the point of knowing things.
Yeah, that moment that you realize a new thing is what's really amazing. Not like, now that I know this thing.
Yeah. Well, it's just like all of that wonder that goes into learning something totally brand new. Because you might be inspired to learn about something, but you really don't know anything. And the whole journey of finding all of those things that inspire you and why they're so cool and how they work, like that's the exciting part about it. Like it's really awesome to then have that knowledge and be able to utilize it later on. But just the process of learning is like what you said, what makes it enjoyable.
Yeah. And I guess if we're putting chips into our brains to learn things automatically and just getting fed information, then there's the worry that the information you're getting fed is like biased in some way or not actually true. And there's some...
Right, yeah. You don't have your actual perspective to look at it. It's just like, here is this, but yeah, where did it come from? Who's feeding me this information?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, is it biased or not?
It's potentially some sort of propaganda.
Propaganda, yeah.
If you're living in
Big Brother's in your brain.
Yeah. Except, I don't know, that seems to be always a fear, and even now, and I feel like half the conversations I have with people, you can't agree on what's actually real or what's, fake news.
Totally. And the internet and social media specifically just like ruined that for everybody because there's so much information out there that... there's no possible way to have everybody be informed of what's real information and what's not.
Yeah. I was reading a book one time, I think, and it was comparing now, like the past 10, 20 years with back when the printing press, the Gutenberg printing press, was invented, and how the transformation of, like, instead of just monks handwriting books, copying Bibles and stuff, and that was the only way you made books happen. Now
That's so crazy just to think about. I mean, that's just wild, honestly.
Imagine the carpal tunnel involved there.
Seriously.
And also, like, all the mistakes that would crop up.
Yeah, that would not be a job for me.
Yeah. And that's, like, weird, too, because if I remember right, I think that was, like, you'd have to be a very learned person to be a monk writing Bibles, except it doesn't seem like that actually would require very much intellect. It's really just copying one thing onto another page. I feel like it's a waste of their, like,
abilities.
Yeah, their abilities. They're just, it's like somebody who's got a PhD and they're, working as a cashier. That's what it makes me feel like.
Maybe it's more about the spiritual connection to spreading the word of,
It's
God or whoever.
about it, yeah. But yeah, so we went from that. That's how we made books. They're all handwritten, illuminated manuscripts. And then the printing press comes around, and now you can actually mass manufacture books. So you can get information to people like 100,000 times more effective spread than ever before. And people that didn't know how to read are now learning how to read, and, like, literacy rates go way up. But at the same time, you've got this huge spread of information. It comes with an equally huge spread of misinformation.
Definitely.
And people take advantage of this new situation to spread their propaganda, not just truthful things.
And we've been stuck in that ever since.
Yeah. And now with the internet becoming, like, a big thing and booming, we have another huge boom in the access of information people can acquire, accompanied with another huge boom in the access of misinformation people can acquire.
Right. If you think about it, though, nowadays, any person like me, you, anyone who has access to the internet can put information out there. Where back with the printing press, it was like whoever had the printing press and who owned that company or who had access to it, they could print that information, So there was, like, a limited amount of information coming in that they could actually print. Whereas now, like, my mom can go online and write something on Facebook, and all of her friends are like, oh my God, I can't believe that's true. And it's just like, well, it's not, or maybe it is, but you don't know because this is just a random person. I mean, like, any random person who's unqualified in anything can go online and write something.
Yeah.
And then people who don't know how to decipher whether or not that's true or don't have any, like, actual research skills to check into that, they're just going to believe it.
And you can just claim that you're a doctor or whatever.
You can say anything you want. And if people are gullible or just uninformed, and then they just believe you.
Yeah. It's not like they're going to call up that university and say, did this person ever attend there and get a PhD? And they say, we haven't heard of him. They just look on their article they wrote and say, oh, this person has a degree. And so they're telling me about quantum healing and healing crystals.
Right.
Obviously, they're telling the truth.
They're a professional.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a definite tangent that we could go off on. Just the whole thing of misinformation on Facebook. But I feel like we all know that that's a place for specifically just misinforming people.
Yeah, I had a good laugh the other day because I saw that one of my brother's posts was flagged for misinformation. And 99% of the things that he posts on Facebook I find crazy. So It was like a feeling of slight justice in that scenario. You're like, that's, well, maybe he doesn't know that that's misinformation, but you do. But then I was thinking, the fact that something is flagged misinformation, most likely, most cases, the person who is spouting off the misinformation probably views Facebook's or Twitter's flagging of it to be just further evidence that, like, the system
there's
is
someone
out
behind
to get
it.
them. Yeah, it's a conspiracy.
Well, yeah, because technically, who's flagging it, and why are they right and not wrong?
Yeah. They're just trying to suppress the truth.
Right.
Yeah.
This reminds me of my X-Files poster there. Well, there's the alternate one that says the truth is out there, but is it? How will we ever know it?
Yeah. Do you think that the truth is something that, like, wins in the end? Do you think people are ultimately brought to the truth, or, like, the truth survives? Do you have any feeling about, like, I don't know, will humanity ever, like, actually finally reach the truth in whatever category, whatever topic it is? Like, does the truth have some sort of inevitable victory?
I don't think necessarily that it does. I think it's nice to think that it does, because certainly we would all like to be fed the truth or figure it out about certain things throughout our lives, but I don't think that necessarily everything always comes to the truth. I mean, someone, like, let's say your mom told you a lie your entire life, like, since you were a kid, and then, I mean, just whatever it was, you believed it your whole life, and then she passed away, and no one ever knew that lie that she told you, and then you just continued on with your life thinking that one thing, but it was totally the opposite of what it was. I mean, yeah, maybe in some roundabout way it could come back to you, but it doesn't necessarily have to.
Yeah. One thing that I really appreciate my mother for is the fact that she...
Sorry, I wasn't calling your mom a liar. It was just an example.
Is the fact that she never raised me to believe in Santa Claus.
Ooh, that's interesting.
I always knew that Santa Claus was a myth.
So how did you react around other kids who believed in Santa?
I spoiled it for one of my friends. I remember it was, I think, the 3rd grade, and I think we were like waiting for our parents to pick us up after school, or it was during recess or something like that, and Christmas was coming up, or it was like St. Nick's Day or something like that, which I never celebrated.
Yeah, I think we did a couple times, but I didn't really like get the
I always thought it was weird.
Point of it, yeah.
But I think it was that, or that was coming up, so he was excited. And I think I just kind of offhandedly mentioned how Santa's not real.
Yeah.
Kind of assuming that he knew that, and then he didn't know that. And then his mom came shortly thereafter, and he was crying to her.
Oh, no.
And she was upset at me.
Wait, did your parents tell you, like, hey, other kids are going to believe this thing, but don't tell them about it?
I don't remember that happening. So
probably not then.
Yeah. Or I don't know, maybe I just
even you were a kid, you probably didn't think that much about it.
Yeah. I don't know. I just thought like Santa.
So what are your personal views on that?
On raising kids to believe in Santa?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I'm kind of in agreement with my mom on that one, that I don't think it's good. Like, I don't know what good it accomplishes, and I could see that it does some harm. Just in like putting a strain on trust between your parents.
Yeah, like
if they're just literally lying to you for fun.
Yeah, just because everybody else is lying to their kids for fun.
Yeah.
But also then there's this fun mysticism for kids because, kids they're not like participating in the real world like we are. They're just like these tiny humans who are just like living until they have to, go to school and then, eventually grow up. So it like provides this sense of mysticism and like it's like part of a storybook almost that kids can like live in and participate in. And that's like something that's very exciting. It's like, oh yay, once a year, like, if I'm really good, I'll ask for these things. And this like, this magical man's going to bring me all these gifts, which is definitely sort of weird. But I feel like, I don't know, as a kid, I was kind of creeped out by Santa too, though.
Yeah, it is just
it was sort of weird. Like to me, it was just like, okay, like logically, once you're old enough, you can do the math and be like, okay, there's no way this man is like flying his one tiny sleigh around and like delivering presents to all these kids. Like that's just wild. I was like, also, we don't have a chimney. Like, does he come in the front door? Because that's the whole typical thing. And I just thought it was weird that this strange man who I've never met and will never see is coming into my house.
You can meet him when you go to the mall.
Oh, right. So I don't know if my parents told me, but I always knew that those were fake and they freaked me out. And every time we went there, I don't know, I think it was only a couple times and my parents were like, okay, you're next in line to like get on Santa's lap. I would just scream. I just like scream and cry and make a scene. I was like, this is creepy. I am not sitting on that man's lap with a fake wig. Like it was weird to me and it made me uncomfortable. So it was like, I don't know this man and I know that it's not Santa, whoever that is. And why are you making me sit on this like creepy middle-aged man's lap? Like that's so weird, right?
That is really surprising that we still do that today. It seems just strange. Like
it seems like something of the past.
Yeah, having
your kids sit on a stranger's lap
and
talk to them and talk to them about the things that they most want. Like that's weird.
Like paying some guy to have a like procession of children sit on his lap.
Yeah, that creepy. Just in general, that's super creepy. That's so weird.
Yeah.
And like even as a small kid, like I was a really shy, reserved kid, but I just thought there was something wrong with that. And I was like really mad that my parents made me do that. Probably more so my mom. But then when I'd get up there, I'd just start like screaming because I was just like, I don't want to do this. And the only way I cannot do this is if I make a scene. But it's like, it shouldn't have to be like that.
Yeah.
Like if a kid says, hey, I want to go see Santa at the mall, be like, okay, if like you really want them to do that. But if a kid doesn't want to, like no one should be forced to go sit on a stranger's lap. That's so weird.
Yeah.
That's just like an invasion of privacy and then like trust between your parents. That's like another aspect of it, of just breaking trust.
Giving you out to some elderly man.
Yeah. Yeah. Creepy. It's weird. It's definitely different times now than when we were kids or when our parents were kids.
But they still do it though. But like who's doing that? Like I wouldn't take my kid to the mall and let them sit on some random dude's lap. Just, I don't know. It's weird. Yeah. I don't know. I think you can still try to foster that like amazement within children on things that aren't fictional.
Totally.
Like you are talking about the wonder of nature and just like being like inspired and like spiritually awakened by walking through like nature trails and
Sure.
stuff. You can get that in children. Like
Totally. I could say like when it's wintertime, like around Christmas, like anytime we see this particular bird or like this sort of thing, that's like a sign of, I mean, well, that's still like lying, but that's, even if you don't have to make up some story, you could just teach them to like appreciate something that's real so much that it makes them feel like it's some sort of mystical experience or just.
And I feel like lying to children in mysticism terms, it produces some sort of longing for this supernatural world that they could live in but doesn't exist and they thought existed for a good 10 years. Have you ever seen the movie Boyhood?
No.
It's fantastic. Mostly just how it was done. Because it took one kid, his sister, I mean, they weren't actually related, but it took several actors and actually followed them for 18 years in real life.
Oh, that's cool.
Okay, not in real life. They came back to film the movie every year or whatever.
Sure.
So that you could actually see this actor grow up. And they told the story of his growing up. And when he was like 8 or whatever, he asked his dad if magic is real or if elves are real. And his dad said no, and he was really disappointed. And then his dad was trying to explain to him that like there's still amazing wonders in the world. Like you can swim through a blue whale's veins because they're so huge.
Yeah.
The kid was just like,
Like
it wasn't as cool as magic.
Yeah.
Or as cool as elves. So like if you grew up and your parents were telling you that Lord of the Rings was real.
Oh my gosh. That would just be.
Imagine.
This is how I feel about Harry Potter too.
Yeah.
I mean, I never actually believed Harry Potter was real and magic like that, but it's just like, I don't know, just the fact that, like, as a child learning those things, like, you want that, you know?
Yeah, I feel longing for Middle Earth, and I always knew that Lord of the Rings.
Earth poster right here.
Wow, yeah. I didn't even see that. But yeah, I feel longing for that world, knowing my whole life that it wasn't real. So if I had, like, grew up on thinking that it was, how much more depressed would I be right now?
But that's like a reality that we all have to face with growing up. I mean, that's like growing up in general, is being able to face disappointment, because throughout life, there's going to be so many different experiences that lead you to disappointment.
That's true. But I don't know. Is it better or worse to just add more of that?
Because you don't want to raise children as adults. You don't want to have them as kids, not have any of that, and then they're basically just mini adults. Because I feel like childhood is like the only time in your life that you're truly free.
Yeah.
Because once you become an adult who's part of the system, you're just locked in. It's like, here, like, hop in for the ride, baby. Like, here we go. Like, you're locked into the system forever. And the only time you're free from that is when you're a kid, or, I don't know, you go off the grid or just, like, disconnect or something.
The sad thing is, I think I and probably most kids feel the opposite way when they are kids. You think that adults are the ones who are free.
Oh, yeah. I think that is the common misconception when you're a kid, because you're like, wow, I can't wait to grow up. Like, I can do this and I can do that. And I can do whatever I want. But it's totally the other way around. When you're a kid, you can do whatever you want. I mean, there are definitely certain freedoms as an adult that you can do that you obviously couldn't do when you were a kid. But everything is tied with so much responsibility. And then as you get older, it's just more and more responsibility. And you have to carry yourself in different ways, like as you age, you know, and then you're just so far removed from any sort of freedom you had when you were a kid.
Yeah. I think a trend that I see now over the past 15 years in parenting that's really upsetting to me is like the lack of freedom that kids have, or like the ever-growing lack of freedom. Because I don't think kids nowadays, at least not as much as they used to be, are just allowed to roam the neighborhood or go outside like free of supervision.
They're definitely not.
Now there's all this like hyper worry about your kids getting into trouble or getting abducted or whatever. And maybe some of that is well-founded, but just the fact that kids like can't just be free as much as they used to be, I feel like is making childhood worse.
Oh, I think you're totally right. I mean, and I always wonder why that is. Like, I've had conversations with people about this same topic, because, yeah, kids nowadays, it's like they're not allowed to be, like, out of their parents' sight. Whereas, like, I don't know, when I was a kid, it was just like, I'm going outside for the day. I'll come back in tonight, kind of thing, you know. But the place that I grew up in, I was in the middle of the country. It was just like, I was told as a kid, like, don't go by the road, and like, don't walk where there's like strangers and stuff. It was like, stay on our property or go down by the woods, but don't, if there's anyone there or, you know, someone approaches you, like, get out of there type of thing. But it still, in the most sense, it was like me just roaming around all day doing whatever I wanted. But kids can't do that nowadays.
I mean, I grew up in the suburbs, and I kind of...
And you could still do that?
I had the same experience as you. I could just go outside, and I'd come back home for dinner, and
So why do you think that is?
I don't know. Maybe it's... I don't want to draw too many things that aren't related back to, like, 9/11, but I don't know. Maybe, like, that was the start of people being like overly worried about safety and breaking some sort of bubble of like, we're all safe and free, even though we still totally are.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that, like, I don't know, there was some sort of like public safety,
Fear.
moral panic going on.
Yeah, and it just kind of never left.
Yeah.
Just like people being afraid of things. I think also technology and the internet and like, I mean, people nowadays, you know, like a parent might have a Facebook account and they're sharing all these photos of their kids all over the internet. And if it's not set to private, anyone can see those. Like some creepy dude who wants to abduct kids can go look at your Facebook and like pick that out and then like know where you live because you checked in at a certain spot or you're talking about your specific location online. So many people give out their private information. And I feel like that honestly is just like endangering your kids' safety right there. Because previously people didn't have that. You know, we didn't have Facebook and social media to be giving away those details. So I feel like those things happen less often. But now we're just letting people into our very personal worlds without knowing who's even looking at that.
Yeah, that's probably more of it. Like the rise of social media is probably making people be more protective over their children. I was listening to a podcast recently that was talking about how the internet and social media especially are making it a lot easier and making like a boom of child sexual abuse going on, because you can make an account on whatever website and pretend to be a 13-year-old and the real 13-year-olds
just add all these
don't
other
know.
kids on there. Yeah.
Yeah. But I still don't see how that really connects to like being just out in the physical world of your neighborhood, unless you're worried that there are actually like people coming to abduct children where you live.
I think another big thing with it that's internet and social media related is people's access to news.
Yeah.
I mean, because you used to be able to just turn on your 5 o'clock news or, you know, whatever times it came on. And for the most part, unless something happened, it'd be like the same reel of news. But it was like you set aside a time to look at the news. Now, all day long, you can go on any website that you want and just continuously see news. And it's just so many horrible things are happening. But that's also because of the fact that there's so many people reporting so many different stories. Yeah. You know, there's so much information out there. And I feel like that can create an atmosphere of fear for people. If they keep seeing so many negative things, then in their mind, they're like, oh my God, the world is a bad place. And I can't let my kid out into that world, you know, without me knowing where they're at.
Do you feel like in any way that's an indicator that the world on average hasn't gotten worse, but it just has shown to be gotten worse because there's more news coverage of terrible things?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I guess I can't say for sure, but I feel like, you know, people having access to all this information, whereas they didn't have constant access to it before.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of like people who get just addicted to social media. People can get addicted to checking the news.
Yeah.
And then they see all these horrible things. And like my grandma is a person like that. You know, she doesn't have obviously social media or internet or anything like that, but because she's older and she's just at home all the time, she'll just like have the news on all the time. So it's, you know, if you've ever watched the news anytime lately, it's always just, there's just a lot of terrible stuff that they report on, because that's mostly what people want to know. It's like, is there something I need to be afraid about there? And I'll turn on the news to see if it is. But it was like my whole childhood, and even now my grandma's just like was super afraid that something was always going to happen to me, because there's like bad guys out there, there's bad things happening, there's people driving crazy on the road, getting in accidents. And, you know, she always told me like anytime I was going somewhere, she wanted me to like tell her where I was going, or, you know, just be really careful all the time. But it was because she, you know, watches so much news. And she sees all these things happening. And it's like people who do that, who get addicted to watching those types of things, get scared.
Yeah, for every genocide in a different country and for every missing child that like happens, I feel like in the past you would only hear about that every once in a while. Now you're bombarded by it all the time. So
like, just think of all the news that we've, like the things that have happened in 2020. Just this year. Just think of all the things. I mean, you probably can't. You can't remember all the terrible things. I mean, what was the one thing at some point? It was like killer hornets or something like that. The murder hornets. Yeah. I mean, that was like 1 week of news and then it was gone and we never heard about it again. But everyone was like, oh, is this a new thing we have to worry about? And then it was, you know, then it was this, then it was that. And there's so many different things, I mean, in reality that probably affected all of us, not in that big of a way, because I don't know why, I guess, but there's just so much out there that it's changing so rapidly, and people feel the need to report on every new little thing to get a lead, to get a story, to get more viewers. And I feel like that isn't necessary.
Yeah. Have you seen any of the memes that are kind of referring to life as like a TV show? There's like new plot twist of coronavirus.
Oh, yeah,
like
yeah.
Murder hornets, they had to establish them early because they're going to come back for the season finale.
Right, yeah. It's like, yeah, what's going to happen on New Year's?
Yeah. Well, that was speeding. I've got a new one for you, whether it
Okay.
should be illegal or not.
Wow, that was just speeding.
Yep.
Dang.
How about jaywalking?
I honestly didn't even know jaywalking was a thing until I went to college. I'll be totally honest with you. Because where I grew up, and maybe where you did too, anyone could walk across the street anywhere. I didn't even know what jaywalking was. And then I moved to a city where there was, designated crosswalks where you had to press the button and wait to walk across the street. And I was really confused because I didn't know that it's illegal, right? Or they can fine you for it or something. And I was like, that's insane. This is a street. Like if I have a brain, I can look both ways and see if a car is going across. Why can't I just walk across the street? So, yeah, definitely should not be illegal if it is.
Yeah, I don't know the status of it right now. It might be illegal in some places, like cities, not in others. But that always seemed weird to me, jaywalking.
Just like it's illegal for me to cross the street, even if it's safe. Like I have to walk all the way down the block to go across a crosswalk. That's crazy.
I was reading something today. I don't know if it's actually information that's real, but jaywalking was made illegal because they wanted to push the blame of people getting hit by cars onto the pedestrians rather than the car owners.
Oh, I mean, that logically makes sense.
And then I think that was an effort to make cars more accessible to people so that more people would buy them.
That's interesting.
Because then if you hit somebody, it's not your fault.
Right. It's them for not walking where they're supposed to walk.
Yeah.
But I mean, just in general, like a person gets, well, I mean, if there's a person in the middle of the road, you stop your car. That's just like the way that it is. Yeah. And if someone walks out in front of you, it's just their fault. I don't know. I mean, if they're going to walk right out in front of your car, like they should have seen you coming, or I don't know. Yeah, that's a tricky one, but I don't think it should be illegal.
How do you think about the self-driving cars handling this problem? Because, like the trolley problem, if there's a train coming on a track and you can split the train to go off in one of two directions, the direction it's currently on, there's 5 people on the track, but you could split it off to hit one person instead of the 5 people.
Right.
Is that something you should do? So with like programming self-driving cars, they have to actually
program that.
Yeah, because there could be events where your self-driving car is going to hit somebody, and who should it hit? Should it hit the elderly person or the child? Should it hit the group of like 2 people?
But then who's liable for that? Is it the car? I mean, like, is it the car? Like, that's such a crazy question because is it the manufacturer of the car? Yeah. Is it the specific people who have programmed the software into that car? I mean, are those particular people, like, let's just say it was like 2 guys or something. Are those 2 guys now responsible for all these people dying everywhere? Like, that's insane. But it also can't be your fault if you're just a passenger in the car and the car is meant to be self-driving and make those decisions.
Yeah, I don't know. That'd be really tricky for court cases to handle that.
Yeah. Be like, just sue the car. It's like, what? That doesn't make any sense. That's another just weird thing about self-driving cars. Like, I feel like you need to have someone who is liable and having to make that choice, whether to hit 5 people or 1 person, and having a artificial system choose that. I mean, that's just so bizarre to me.
Maybe it's just a thing where the car company has to pay the costs of give settlement money to whoever got hit.
So then what happens with car insurance? Because car insurance is like on your car, so if you get in an accident or you hit someone or something. But now if it's the car who's getting in the accident, are you paying that car insurance, or is it the car company who has to somehow insure that car?
I would hope, and this could be a bright side of self-driving cars, that car insurance would become obsolete and it wouldn't exist anymore, because what's it for?
I mean, like, if it was a self-driving car, then you would think that no matter what happens to it, then it would be the car company.
Yeah.
But that just seems like that would just get it so insane, because look how many accidents happen every day.
Well, I think this is another thing with self-driving cars is, at least any of the things that I've looked at and the people that have been talking about this are saying that the fact that you would program a self-driving car because they can pick up on sensory information that humans can't or are distracted about. So like the number of car accidents would go way, 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 way down with self-driving cars.
Sure.
So the few times that they do have to make that decision of who am I going to hit, the total numbers of deaths that happen because of car accidents would still be like 1% of what they used to be.
Right.
So if the car companies have to pay for this car insurance,
likely it wouldn't be as much as you think it is.
Yeah, it'd still be not all that much money if everybody owns their cars.
So what happens to when the car's like software system malfunctions? And how do you know if it malfunctions or just made a bad choice? Like, what if the system just gets all screwed up and it starts to like, driving all crazy and going really fast and stopping and then hits someone? I mean, just what if the actual like mechanism of it is messed up? What happens then? Like, can you prove that? Can you say like, oh, the car was just doing what it thought was best, or is it actually the software is bad, and what happens then? Because what happens when there's, millions of cars on the road every day and a bunch of them malfunction? Like, how could you get it so that they would never do that,
Yeah, there could be a circumstance where you've got Tesla's got like all these cars. Everybody now owns a Tesla, and they all have the same programming. And then one day there's a glitch, and they all just hit as many, instead of avoiding people, their new programming that's accidentally in there is to hit people.
Actually, this reminds me of X-Files episodes. This is something that totally happened on there. Because, I mean, I've seen a recent episode where, well, not recent, it's obviously a really old show, but where there was like a artificial intelligence in the computer, and then it was like somehow throughout the thing it was killing people by like making the elevator malfunction so that it totally dropped, and then it hit the ground and the person died, So like what happens when someone can, theoretically hack into the system and just make the cars do whatever they want, I mean, you're essentially, by getting a self-driving car, you're giving someone else permission to control you. I mean, because, yeah, it's just the software, but what if it's somebody else controlling your car? I mean, like, that's what it is. If all these cars are on the same type of, like, software loop or whatever, I mean, you're essentially handing over your freedom to have somebody else control your driving.
That's true.
I don't like that. I think it should be up to each individual person to drive their car. I mean, I wouldn't feel comfortable allowing a machine that could possibly malfunction drive me when I know that, for the most part, I'm a really safe driver and I won't get in accidents ever. I won't just randomly malfunction, Yeah. I mean, hopefully.
But then the other side of it is you might be a really safe driver, but if somebody is going to hit you, a self-driving car could probably do maneuvers that you weren't capable of. It would sense this incoming car before you could and get out of the way.
That's true.
I've been actually seeing a few videos lately because there's a few self-driving cars on the road. So I saw one 3 days ago that was an intersection where this truck was going and a self-driving car was right behind it. And they were going across an intersection, and a car came across going to like T-bone them, and the self-driving car like just stopped like right before, and the incoming car only hit the truck. So like just at the last split second, the self-driving car stopped and avoided being right in the spot where it would have gotten hit. That's the type of thing that you wouldn't even notice if you were the driver.
So what if you're coming to a crossroads and there's a self-driving car coming at you, and you're also going, and let's say, I don't know, let's say you're running a red light or you're going and the car is just coming at you and you think it's going to hit you. And then right at the same moment, the self-driving car turns, but you turn the other way and you crash into something. But the self-driving car turns away from you and stops. But in when you saw it, they were coming at you and you weren't expecting that car, because you don't know that it's a self-driving car and that it's not going to hit you. Yeah. Like you have no idea that car, and like in that such a fast moment, there's no way, even if there was like some identification on the car, that you would know it's not going to hit you. So you're going to quick veer out of the way and you might crash your car and die.
Yeah.
because of a self-driving car.
Maybe that's an argument for the universality of self-driving cars. Maybe like if we're going to have them, everybody needs to have them.
Right. But there's just no way that everyone could agree to that. And that's also
or afford
they'd be insanely expensive.
Yeah.
So they are a thing though right now?
Yeah, some exist. And like I know they're testing them, and I know some people own them, and I know Tesla has self-driving that you can turn on when you have to be controlling the car when you're going like on or off a freeway ramp, but when you're on the freeway you can turn on self-driving. And
it's interesting. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like there's no argument that someone could tell me that would make me say yes, let's have self-driving cars. I'm just totally not for it.
Yeah,
I mean, there's definitely benefits to it probably, but I just feel like an actual system that could work for that is just never something that I would do. Like if you came over and you were like picking me up because we were going to grab lunch and you're like, hey, get in my self-driving car, I'd be like, I don't know about that way, and I might just drive there by myself.
Does it really feel all that different from, say, getting in a bus or an airplane where you're not in control either? Sure, there's a human in control in those situations, but you're just a passenger in a moving vehicle, kind of subject to whatever they're going to do.
I mean, yeah, when you look at it that way, it seems very similar. But to me, when I look at it, it's still a computer is driving the car versus a human. And as much as humans are dumb and I don't like to trust them, I feel like until there's so much evidence that self-driving cars are better than humans driving cars, I just couldn't choose a self-driving car.
All right. So what do you think about the possession of marijuana as being something illegal or
That's stupid. There's no reason that should be illegal. I mean, I guess there's like issues with it when it's illegal in the state or wherever you are and you are in possession of it. But that's just like decriminalizing it. So when you get caught with it, it's like you're not even really caught with it. It's just like, oh, you have it and it's fine. There's no fines from it. Like nothing happens to you. But yeah, in general, I just think it should be legal everywhere.
Yeah. I was just in Illinois, and I had totally forgotten that it's actually illegal there now.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that too.
I didn't do anything about that information, but like...
If the cops are listening.
But yeah, my girlfriend's uncle was like, hey, before you guys leave, there's a weed dispensary across the street. And I was like, what?
And you're like, whoa, hell yeah.
I was like, what world am I living in?
Yeah.
For so long, is like such a stigma on it, I feel like.
It's crazy that it goes from being like so illegal one day and then they pass these laws that make it legal. And then literally the next day, it's like, you can go into the store and you can walk out with bags of weed and edibles and stuff. It just feels wrong even if it's legal.
It feels like something that's definitely not illegal because the people think it should be illegal. More than half the people I ask about that seem to say, no, it should definitely be legal. It makes no sense for it to be illegal.
Right.
So why? I don't know.
But what demographic of people are you asking?
That's probably true.
I mean, but I don't know.
I just parents, though, who are pretty conservative, at least.
I feel like most people are pretty open to it now. It's just not a big deal anymore. It's kind of how people view alcohol, you know?
Yeah.
It's basically the same thing.
I'm actually, if something is going to be illegal between the two, I would prefer it to be alcohol, honestly.
Yeah?
But
for what reasons?
I feel like alcohol is more of a danger to people.
You saying alcohol should be illegal if there was one of the two?
If one of the two were to be illegal, I would say alcohol. I feel like it's more of a danger to people's mental health than like marijuana is.
I don't know. I mean, I think yes and no. I definitely know people who are regular marijuana users who it definitely impacts them negatively, although they might not see it. It's not addictive in the way like heroin or some sort of like higher schedule drug or whatever. But I feel like it can be habit forming and it can definitely ruin your life in other ways by, making you unproductive, there's lots of, I guess it just depends on the person who's using it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think both of them should be legal and it's really up to the own person's like best judgment on how to use it to know how they interact with that substance and be responsible about it.
Yeah. And another reason why I think that I view alcohol as worse is because it's more like health damaging.
Oh, definitely. 100%.
Like it's like more like literally a poison than...
Actually.
Yeah. So it's like you're damaging your liver, your
liver. I mean, long-term use of alcohol, like just having, like suffering from alcoholism. Well, I don't even want to say suffering because to me, I think that's definitely a choice. Yeah. I think all of those things are personally just choices that people make. I don't think people are necessarily suffering from those things like you're talking about a disease, but yeah, it's a choice that people make, and in the long term, it damages your liver, but also just your brain in general, your memory, like your heart, other things. Like it's super damaging to consume that type of thing for a long time. So yeah, way worse for your health. Yeah.
There are lots of epidemiology studies that talk about like Mediterranean diets and like how they're healthier, and people often come away with the conclusion that like they're healthier because people are drinking more wine there.
Yeah. I mean, I think wine has been like generally proven to be like the healthiest form of alcohol if you're drinking it. Yeah. I haven't really read into that as much, but yeah, the whole thing with red wine is good for you, in some amounts versus
but still,
hard liquor or something.
Yeah, instead of vodka.
Yeah.
But I always find it funny though that people are like, yeah, that's the way I'm going to change my diet to be healthier is I'm going to just start drinking more red wine.
Yeah, I feel like that's not really...
Instead of like looking at all of the things, how Mediterranean diets are different and like how they eat more...
Just their lifestyles too.
Yeah, and
because I feel like in general, just from, I don't know, maybe just like documentaries and things that I've seen, just their lifestyle and attitude towards life and professions and work life, it's just a lot less stress. Yeah. And they prioritize things like family and friends over working themselves to death and just like always getting ahead of the next guy. Yeah. It's a lot less like that. And I feel like stress accumulates so much in your body over your lifetime, and that can be very physically damaging to your health. I don't know, that's kind of a tangent, but I feel like people don't realize how much stress impacts their health.
There is actually an optimum level of stress, though. It's good for you.
Yeah. I suppose it's not good to have absolutely none.
Yeah. I'm forgetting the doctor's name right now, but he's been popular lately. Maybe I'll think of it later. But there's a doctor that's running a lab right now that's looking at aging and how to reverse it or how to stop it or prolong it or whatnot. And your body, senility, like your body aging, or senescence, I guess, is due to what they found is like 7 different things. So basically what's happening is the telomeres, the little ends of your chromosomes,
Mm-hmm.
they start out long, and then your cells have to die off and reproduce themselves. And every time they reproduce, the telomere length gets a little bit shorter and shorter and shorter, as well as, senescence in general is due to your cells having small mistakes when they reproduce, which is what forms wrinkles in your face and muscle atrophy and whatnot. So you're trying to reproduce your own body and clone yourself, and you're making tiny errors as you get older. So the way to reverse aging, or to at least stave off aging as long as you can, is to delay the amount of time that your cells will die, like lengthen their individual lifespans. So make them live longer so that they reproduce overall less, like fewer times.
Sure.
There are like two states that they found of a cell. One is the reproductive state, where they're not focusing on longevity, they're just focusing on spawning, cloning themselves. And the other one is survival. So they're trying to conserve resources in your body to just live, and they're not putting any energy into cloning themselves. To get into the survival state of your individual cells, you can do it 7 different ways, or all of these ways. One of them is stress.
Because that's almost like when you get really stressed, it can be kind of like a flight response.
Yeah.
So that would put your body into a mode where it's like, right now in this moment, or for this period of time, I'm just focusing on surviving.
Yeah.
Versus living and, like you said, like cells dying off and reproducing. You're focusing on like maintaining right now what you have.
Yeah. If you think about it in terms of like pre-human or like hunter-gatherer human life, if you're really stressed out, it's probably because death is on your heels. Like,
totally.
Maybe you have a broken leg, or you're getting chased by a jaguar, so you're really stressed out, or just because you're generally worried about like where you're gonna go next and how to feed your family and whatnot. So you're stressed. Yeah, your body goes into the mode of like, just, we're gonna keep living and like survive, and not put any energy into reproduction of cells. And then another way to do it is to be too hot. Another way to do it is to be too cold, which kind of just also fit into the stress category. It's stress on your body, like physically. Another way is not getting enough calories. So like...
so your body is deficient, so it's trying to literally hold on to all of the things that it has.
Yeah. So yeah, that's why so many people are now touting the benefits of intermittent fasting. Is that like, I don't know.
That's one of the benefits, is like, is it linked to like reversing aging or just slowing down aging?
Slowing down aging, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that one.
Yeah. And then you could think about it in the same way. Like if you're in a position where you don't have any food, you've been looking for food for a few days, your body is just trying to preserve itself.
Definitely.
And then another one that's similar to the caloric intake is not getting enough protein. If you're actually protein...
We have that problem, don't we? Stupid vegans.
If you're protein limited, that actually makes you age later in life.
Yeah.
And I think that was only 5 that I brought up. There's other ones that I've probably forgotten.
Just that kind of reminds me of, this is just seeing people online and, Instagram and stuff, but people who have chose to do like specifically juice diets or like super raw diets that are mostly fruit. So fruitarians and stuff like that, you'll see people, they're 50 or 60, but they look like they're 35. Yeah. And that could make sense, not having so much of a buildup of like protein or maybe even other things, and your body is like reserving the nutrients that it's getting.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some sort of connection there, maybe. But that was just the one thing that I thought of.
And I feel like with anything, there's a small threshold of like where it's good to be, and then going too far to either direction is bad. So, if you restrict your calories too much, then you're going to age faster. And if you eat too much, then you're going to age faster.
How could we ever possibly know what's the balance? What's the middle ground?
There's some perfect like Goldilocks zone to.
And also every single person's body is different. In general, we can look at all of our health the same,
Yeah.
But like as an overall principle, but for each individual person, those things vary.
Yeah, that's true. Why was I talking about aging?
Let me think.
I don't remember.
I'm trying to like backtrack to where we started with this. What was the question?
Oh, that was about possession of marijuana.
Oh, okay.
So another one that's illegal or not illegal. How about lobbying? Do you have any feelings about lobbying?
I mean, yeah, that's kind of a big topic.
It is.
That's a very big topic. I don't know, because you look at it and you see all the negative consequences that lobbying can do in certain circumstances, but then what if you were in a situation where you needed a lobbyist to help you out? Would you be against it then? You might look at all of these circumstances there's so much like political crap and just like other industries that use lobbyists to get their way when it really shouldn't be that way. So I think you kind of have to look at it individually and just look at the particular circumstances. But like, what do you think? Like, what if you were a politician and you knew like, hey, I could probably win this election if I get all these lobbyists to do all this, stuff and campaign or do their thing for me for a certain specific situation, and that would make me look better or get me ahead.
Yeah, you could probably find
it's like a money game.
Yeah, instances of where I might disagree with myself on this, but I feel like overall I'm generally against lobbying, and I just feel like it's basically somehow legalized bribery is artificially propping up industries that probably should have failed.
Definitely.
Like
I think of a lot of the food industry,
yes,
just like food industries in general with lobbyists and how messed up and backwards so many of their systems are for doing that.
Yeah, like if you consider like the meat industry and the price that you can pay for ground beef, like without the subsidies that the government gives to these companies, and the reason they give these subsidies is because they help them out in their campaigns by lobbying. If you didn't have this back and forth between the money exchange from the government to the industries, that these industries probably wouldn't exist or would be suffering way more than they currently are.
Totally.
So like if you want to go off of some like idealists, capitalists like society where the market always knows what's right and companies that don't deserve to be around aren't around, which I'm not really all for that entirely, but parts of it I feel like I am. And just the fact that like artificially reducing prices keeps companies around, like the dairy industry in England.
Oh yeah, I was just going to mention something about the dairy industry. Yeah. Or just like the food pyramid in general. Yeah. Like that's like a whole big thing. The one we grew up with, it's just like, I don't know what's on the bottom, like whole grains and then fruits and vegetables and whatever. But then part of that is, dairy's on there. So like just as an example, dairy's its own section. But if you look at actual like health consequences of consuming a lot of dairy, it's not good for you. Yeah. And there's so many studies saying like, don't eat a lot of dairy. But I mean, especially look at us because we live in Wisconsin, like the dairy lobbyists are getting paid to lobby for the dairy industry to say, hey, dairy is good. Like they'll come out with a study that says, well, actually, our specific like Dairy USA Incorporated, says that drinking 3 glasses of milk a day is really great for you. And it's like, of course they're going to say that because they have an incentive to because they want you to consume their product. But then there's all these other studies out there that aren't getting full attention because they're against the dairy industry, but the dairy industry has so much money that they can sway the actual information that's out there, even if it's not true, and they can say that it's true.
And what the dairy industry does, and really all industries with enough money do, is they just fund a shit ton of studies, and then they look at all of them like, oh, that's the one that's
most fitting to our needs.
Shows that dairy is good for you. The rest of them didn't show that. So we're going to use that one, burn all the rest of them.
Yeah, exactly. They just do all of these studies and just pick the one that is most suited to their needs or to whatever they're trying to lobby for.
Yeah. When there's completely contradictory studies not funded by industry that show that the consumption of dairy actually leads to osteoporosis and like your bones becoming brittle in old age.
Yeah.
When the like common knowledge that's not true is just the opposite of that.
Isn't that crazy though? I mean, because if I would ask someone, my parents' age, like just asking my parents like, hey, is milk really good for you? They'd probably be like, yeah, totally. Like it's good for your bones, calcium, blah, 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 blah. But I mean, I'm sure in ways that is good for you. I mean, if you really like take it apart, but I think in general, it's not.
Yeah.
But how else would the dairy industry make money? I mean, and we live in the dairy state. People around here don't want to hear that dairy isn't good for you. So they'll pay whatever amount of money to persuade the public that all these things are good for you.
Yeah.
Like making things, you also have to follow health trends, so if there's like a low fat trend going on, you can make all your dairy products low fat. And it's like, this is a healthy dairy product. It's low fat. Buy this low fat yogurt, buy this low fat cream cheese, like, skim milk, all these things. It's like, make the healthier choice. Like this is better for you. So that's them saying, hey, it's not healthy. And now we're making it healthier for you, which just off on another side tangent, making things low fat actually makes them worse for you because so, when you have something that's like a whole milk product or whatever, like that's going to be a really rich, creamy product. But to make something that has like 0% fat and it still tastes good, they have to add all these additives and preservatives and emulsifiers, like all these things that are not good for you that weren't there to begin with to make it palatable to you. So it's just like, there's no way to win. It's just like, do you pick the one that's bad for you or the one that they took the bad stuff out of and put
different bad stuff
in? Yeah, it's so insane to me.
I totally used to be a skim milk drinker, like voraciously.
Oh, so was I.
I would come home from school and drink a glass of milk. Just
Just
straight up.
because, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I did too.
Yeah. I don't even remember how that transition even happened. Like, I guess just watching like documentaries and looking at studies and realizing that
Like, was your family a
everything-
skim milk family, or was it just you?
I think I was the one who was really wanted the skim milk, so they just bought it because I was fussy or whatever.
Sounds like you.
Yeah. I don't know why, because everyone else, I feel like, talks about how skim milk is just water.
Yeah.
And it's
Well,
not
so we
good.
were a skim milk family too, but it was my whole family was like, I mean, there was so many unhealthy things that we ate, but also it was like we drank skim milk. We only bought wheat bread. You know, we bought, I don't know, I feel like my parents tried in some degree to give us healthier choices to things that we might be consuming a lot of, like milk, like bread. I don't know, just like other various things, but
Yeah, my family definitely did not do that. We had white bread and all the name brand cereals that were in like Hot Pockets and like lots of frozen food. Not very great diet.
I think part of the reason that I don't even want to say that we ate healthy, but we definitely didn't have like things like that, was that like when my brother was younger, he was super hyperactive and like to the point where he was like uncontrollable, like
Did
by
they think
my
the sugar
parents.
caused it?
Yeah, so like they did all these like elimination things, and the doctor eventually said like try taking dyes out of his food,
Oh.
because you know like kids like candy, you know, cereals that are colored and all these artificial dyes that are in foods can actually cause hyperactivity in kids. And it was like my brother was to a point where, I mean, he was so out of control all the time and just like doing things without even really realizing he was doing them, just like being overactive. And my parents eventually cut out all dyes from like all of our food, so we would never buy, I don't know, like Trick cereal or, you know, yogurts that had dyes in them or stuff like that. And then that totally went away for him, and he went back to acting like just a normal kid. So I don't know, maybe that was like part of like a personal health crusade my parents were on, so that kind of affected the type of things that we bought. So then I think that kind of instilled in me when I was growing up the idea to try to eat healthier. Like I knew that there was things to avoid.
Yeah. Is your brother older or younger than you?
Older.
I wonder if it would have been a few years, if you would have been like 5 or 6 years older or younger, if you would have been just diagnosed with ADHD by the doctors instead of...
Actually, though, I mean, because that was the exact type of behavior that he was exhibiting. But I mean, that's such another big part of just like artificial food in general, like the ways that it interacts with people's bodies nowadays, and kids specifically, and things like dyes. I mean, I've read a lot of books and, you know, watched documentaries on that kind of thing. It's just like how specifically those things interact with children, and it causes things like hyperactivity, like attention disorders, you know, just them acting out even though they don't know why they're acting out. They're just like, their bodies are just physically doing it, and even if they know they're not supposed to be doing that, they're just doing it. And a lot of it stems back to their diet.
Did you have any experiences like that as a kid where you didn't know why you were doing something?
Like in what regard? Like from food, or just like...
Not just from food, but just like a behavior that you had or a specific action that you did. Because I remember when I was a kid, maybe like 7 or 8 or something, there was at least a few instances where my mom would like ask me why I just did the thing I did. And I legitimately had no answer. I was like, I don't know. Like,
Well, that was my brother. So I feel like it was probably a lot less so me. I was like the shy, scared kid. So I like tried not to get in trouble and just like do random things. I don't know.
Yeah.
I tried to like behave, I guess. My brother was the total opposite. I mean, he was always just like acting out and doing things. And it's like things like, why are you doing this? And he's like, I don't know.
maybe I had early childhood ADHD also.
Maybe you did.
I don't know. It seems like something that's been really overdiagnosed. I knew so many kids in like high school that had been diagnosed with that. And
I feel like part of it is not even like, hey, you have this thing, now live with it forever. I think there's certainly people who just, that's their like chemistry, like that's their physical makeup.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of it stems back to environment, habits, dietary choices, and those things. It's just crazy to me how people don't think that dietary choices in general affect your mood and how you perceive things and how you act. Like, we all know that if you give a kid a bunch of sugar, they're going to go wild. So if we know that eating food can make you act differently, you know, certain types of food or drinking alcohol, you know, will make you act differently. Why do we not think that everything else that we eat is interacting with us in the same way?
Yeah. There's that saying that everybody knows, but I guess we don't really actually internalize that you are what you eat. People just forget about that.
It's totally true. They totally forget about that, like 100%.
Yeah, I can eat Doritos and Hot Pockets all day, and that's not going to make me feel terrible.
Like mentally, yeah, that's great. That sounds awesome. Like I was just talking yesterday, like, man, I wish I could have some Cool Ranch Doritos. That sounds good. I used to love those after swimming when I was a kid. It was like my favorite after swimming snack. For some reason, I don't know, they're just refreshing.
Did you like Cool Ranch more than nacho cheese?
It was a toss-up. I liked them both, but in specific situations.
I feel like I kind of like Cool Ranch more, and people always give me shit for that.
I don't know, it's
cheese
good.
Is apparently the superior product.
Well, just cheese, Wade. Everybody has to eat massive amounts of cheese all the time. Everything has cheese on it.
Yeah, put cheese on everything, including apple pie, which...
That's weird.
Yeah.
I feel like I recently learned that was a thing. Somebody was telling me about that. Maybe it was my grandma. Yeah, I think it was, because she told me that she eats pie at home and she'll put cheese on it. And I like thought she does weird stuff sometimes. She'll eat some weird ass food and tell me about it. But I was like, why are you doing that? And it's a thing. Like, people actually eat that. I'm like, I feel like the pie is fine by itself. You can just eat the pie. You do not need to put cheese on top of it.
Yeah. Is a pie so bad that it needs cheese to make it better?
Pie does need whipped cream, though. And
what?
like that is
No.
no, okay, it doesn't need it, but it is definitely enhanced. So maybe that's just a variation of cheese, right? So here I am. I'm just like talking shit, but yeah.
Whipped cream doesn't belong on anything.
Oh my gosh, I feel physically pained. Whipped cream should go on all foods.
Oh no.
Oh no, like pumpkin pie. You have the pumpkin pie slice, and then you cover it completely in whipped cream, and then you just like slice through the layers of whipped cream and pie. Oh my gosh, so good. That's like my favorite thing.
I think it's better just by itself.
Okay, so just on another side note, creamy is my favorite food texture. So anything that is creamy or like fluffy and creamy, that's like my jam.
It's like ice cream.
So yeah, I like ice cream. These are all like sweets basically related, but like things that have like custard fillings, whipped cream, coconut cream, pudding pies. Like that is like my jam. That's like the thing that I want. Banana cream pie, coconut cream pie. I mean, these are good. And I'm not saying anything about any other types of pies or desserts, but like that's my favorite. Or things like refried beans. I fucking love refried beans. That's like my favorite thing. But to me, it's a creamy texture, and other people are like, that's disgusting.
I like refried beans a lot too.
They're so good.
But I think my favorite food texture would be something like doughy. Like a really good...
Like a donut?
Donut. Or like a slightly underbaked cookie. Or like sourdough bread.
Totally.
Or maybe coffee cake if it's like really moist.
Yeah. Coffee cake is like so good.
Yeah. Those are also mostly all sweet things, but...
Yeah.
Yeah, like creamy is good. Not a big like pudding fan. Not a big whipped cream fan though.
I could just buckets of it in my mouth. Like the cashew cream cheese we make at work, when I make it and I like scrape it out of the blender, I like definitely leave a portion in there that's just like, I gotta have that, because it's just like, hell yeah, dude, this is the best thing ever. This is so creamy, so refreshing, so good. That's my thing. It's my food. My food thing is creamy texture.
All right, well, we've been recording for a little over 2 hours now, which I think is the length that I'm looking for in a podcast.
All right, that sounds perfect.
But before we end the podcast, what is a book that you recommend any listener reads?
This is one that I just read recently, but I know it's very popular, is The Omnivore's Dilemma by Michael Pollan. I feel like it's very, very eye-opening on many different parts of the food industry and just the food chain in general, and it provides a lot of really interesting information that you could, research outside of that even to check out all those topics.
Yeah, that's on my list of books to read. I read How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan.
Yes, that's also one of my favorites. Yep. I just also bought another one of his books on gardening.
Do you have a TV show recommendation?
Ooh, a TV show recommendation.
Do you watch a lot of TV?
I don't watch a lot of variety of TV. Usually it's just like, me watching TV is more like, all right, I have an hour before bed and nothing to do, so I'm just going to throw something on. So, yeah. I don't know. I've been watching The X-Files lately. That's not anything super new or exciting to anybody.
Is that a rewatch for you?
Yeah, it is. Jacob hasn't seen it, so we wanted to run through it so he could watch it. And now he really loves it.
I've never seen The X-Files.
It's what I call a good junk food TV show, where it's just like, the episodes are 45 minutes long, but it's more like watching Friends, it's just like a good watch. And it's not like it's super intensively plot heavy. It gets that way, but it's a 90s TV show. Yeah. It's what you'd expect.
Yeah, I feel like it's similar to Supernatural, where in The X-Files they're investigating, I guess, like a wide variety of things, but did it start with aliens?
Unexplained phenomena is generally the trend.
Yeah.
But aliens.
Yeah. And then Supernatural, it's all supernatural stuff, like ghost possessions and demons.
Well, yeah, and that's also what X-Files is. Yeah. It's just like anything in that variety.
Yeah. And then each episode is a new case, basically.
Right.
Is that how it works?
Yep, pretty much.
So maybe I should watch that.
It's fun. It gets hokey, but it's also fun.
And do you have a musical artist that you recommend any listener listens to?
Ooh. Well, my favorite music artist is John Denver. 70s folk singer, sings about, nature and life and stuff like that. That's one of my all-time favorites. Another band that I really like, or group, not sure if they're still together, is Nickel Creek. They're a bluegrass band. That's another one of my super big favorites. It's a cool cross between, like, what I think, like, between country and folk and, like, Southern roots sounds, which is just a really interesting combination.
All right. Well, it's been great talking to you.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thank you for coming on the podcast. See you next time.